Well, welcome everybody, and I hope you guys are as excited about this opportunity as I am. We spent a lot of time preparing for this academy, and I got to tell you, I've been out, at a few conferences over the last couple of months, and I've been sharing what we're doing with Vizient, our GPO, with some peers in the industry at like Trinity and HCA, and all of them to a person have said that how innovative this is, and they've asked for our workup process. They want to see what the agenda is. They want to see what our content is. So in many instances, we're leading the industry again, which I'm really excited about. So hopefully you guys recognize the importance of this, the time commitment you're going to give us, but also the time commitment we're going to give you. Maybe before we get too deep into it, I'm not sure if everybody knows everybody. So why don't we start with introductions? And I'll start. I'm Michael Prokopis. I'm the VP of Supply Chain here at MD Anderson. And I also wear a second hat, and I'll apologize up front for the academic title, but I'm the Interim Associate Vice Chancellor for the University of Texas System Office of Collaborative Business Services. So again, welcome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick this thing off. I'm going to give you guys a very quick overview of supply chain, and we'll talk a little bit at the same time what our supply chain looks like in that context. And then we'll turn it over to the real experts in the room with Jim leading off with value analysis, and then we'll go from there. So with no further ado. So what's interesting about supply chain is that there is no single archetype that defines what a supply chain should look like. You have to take into account what is your operations and what's your network design. And those two things will help you, if you will, take all of the building blocks and assemble them. But here's why that's important. If I gave each of you the same bucket of Legos and told you to build a house, how many of the houses would look the same? None of them, right? Zero. Well, that's how supply chains are. They have the basic functions and they have basic tenants, but they all operate independently and they operate differently. That's what makes it so exciting and unique. When I first came to MD Anderson, someone said to me, "Are you just going to bring up what you did up north down here to the south?" And I said, "No, because what we did up north wouldn't fit the culture here. It wouldn't fit the goals and the objectives and the strategy of this organization. And so, no, same tenant, same building blocks, but they will be assembled differently." So what we're going to try and do throughout here is, we're going to sprinkle in what you're going to learn about, kind of the supply chain in general. But we're always going to come back and we're going to make sure you guys really understand what we do here at MD Anderson as well. And then hopefully we can start, creating and understanding the nuances and the differences between. That makes sense? For us, for MD Anderson, we're going to work towards the top right-hand corner, which is a platform supply chain. And by the way, just because it's in the top right-hand corner does not make it best. Okay, this is not a 2x2 where the top is best and the bottom is worst. This is an archetype based on what we're trying to accomplish, based upon the goals, objectives, the tools, the strategies that will define our supply chain. But we could easily have been a strategy shaper, and that would have been fine as well. Or we could have been a shared services provider, or we could even be a vertical supply chain. And if you think about it, as you start thinking about different industries, each of these archetypes kind of become more clear to you as to what they're trying to do. So just remember, just because we're up here in the top right-hand corner doesn't mean it's best. But you'll notice that we keep talking about strategy and governance, quality, supply chain sustainability and resiliency. Those are tenets of a platform supply chain. And then down when we talk about orchestrating centers of excellence, right? We talk about a data center of excellence, analytics, demand planning, sourcing. As we continue to evolve and mature, those words will mean more to our organization, and you'll understand why it is that we're focusing on the platform supply chain. So this is it's a busy slide, but at the end of the day, we're trying to create an intelligent clinical and research integrated supply chain. And if I was up at Steward Healthcare, I would have never had "and research" in there, and I probably would not have put "intelligent" in there. And the reasons is that's not what their mission is. That's not how they were trying to deliver patient care. But here, because we're part of an academic institution, intelligent means more. And we also have this large research group that we can never forget about, because their unique needs are very different than what's needed on the clinical side of the house. And if we're not recognizing the two sides, our supply chain will become imbalanced in a hurry. So at the end of the day, and I think you guys are intuitively aware of this, but I'm going to kind of walk through the top flow, which is the supplier vendors. So these are the people who manufacture the things that we ultimately buy. And their supply chain does not look like our supply chain, right? They go out and they source raw goods. They have logistics, right? If they're made in China, they're probably putting it on a boat or an airplane. When it lands at the port of Los Angeles, how does it get across the country to Houston? It ends up on a train or a truck, right? So that's logistics. And then, and that's the raw goods, by the way, go into the manufacturer. The manufacturer also has logistics because they have to ship their products out someplace, and they can go one of two ways. They can go indirect or direct. Indirect is going to be through a distributor like Medline, or on the pharmaceutical side, it could be McKesson or it could be AmerisourceBergen, right? So that's an indirect model. Direct would be directly from the manufacturer to our doc. And we have many vendors who do it that way as well. And it's really their preference how they want to, if you will, control their product is how they tend to think about it. And then, of course, once it gets to distribution, there's another logistics component, right? We get a truck every day from Medline and at 10 o'clock at night that delivers all the products that we're going to consume the following day. And then finally, you end up with MD Anderson where, the product lives. And then we have our supply chain, and our supply chain is represented here in the bottom. And you'll notice that it's comprised of, we'll start with the service line. And the service line is really, if what you think about is the patient. And MD Anderson, we think about breast and colorectal and GI, and each of those are unique sets of procedures and doctors and clinicians that are all focused on a certain type of care. And there's some overlap, right? Band-Aids, gauze, those are overlap. IV tubing, those are overlap. But each one of them then has some special needs, right? Think about an endoscope and what's required to provide an endoscopy for a patient, or an X-ray, or right, all very different. And so we think about those as service lines. Our job then is to support those service lines. And the way we do that is through data, analytics and reporting, value analysis, sourcing, procurement, systems and support, warehousing, logistics, and materials management. And each of those are really important functions. And what we want to do here is make sure over the next, 12 weeks, 14 weeks, whatever the session is that you understand each of these vertical functions. Because if we understand the vertical functions, we can then start talking about where they intersect and how we can actually take the barriers down that sit between them. And whether we intentionally set those barriers or not, they exist, right? If I'm a functional expert in procurement, what am I going to do all day, every day? I'm making sure that requisitions get turned into POs and they go out the door so we can buy. And that's my job. But there's things that I do or things that happen on a requisition that if we can change or do them differently, might make my job easier. And the way I release a PO, the accuracy of the PO with the items, description, and the price and the quantity, how that goes out, that also is another way that we're helping or hurting somebody downstream from us. And so we want to make sure we understand the silos, and that's a lot of what our content was going to be. And once you understand the silos, you can start thinking about how we're going to break down these barriers to make this much more of a flow. And you'll hear me talk about taking our organization and flipping it from a functional perspective, represented here, to a horizontal alignment. Notice the red bar that starts with breast. It's service line and works its way across the page. That is a horizontal alignment, and that's where we ultimately want to get to, because at that point in time, there are no vertical barriers between the functions. I wanted to put this slide up because this is the intelligence that sits behind the organization we're trying to build. And this was borrowed from General Mills, so it's not exactly what we will do here. But what's important to think about is that, if you think about those pillars before, we talked about planning and sourcing and making and delivering the customer, right? All of that still exists in General Mills supply chain as well, but it's supported by capabilities, and then there's foundational things. The foundation things are people, process, and technology, which we all talk about all the time, and data. Data, and notice data is on the bottom. Data is the foundation of being intelligent, because without good data, we can't make data-driven decisions. And that's really important for us, because if we're trying to decide how many of something to buy, what's the service mix that we want to offer to our clinicians and researchers, that's why data becomes really important. So you'll hear things like pristine item dictionary. What does that mean? That means that we have all the items that we're going to consume in the hospital in our ERP system, our enterprise resource planning system, so that we can accurately track the volumes of each of those items used, which help us in a lot of different ways. It helps us with negotiations with the contractor or with the suppliers, because we can go to them and say, I don't use 100, I use 1,000. I want a better price. Right. So foundationally, data is extremely important to us. People, process, and technology, we don't accomplish any of it without you. We don't accomplish any of it without the tools, the laptops, and the software programs that we utilize. And even if they're not the best tools or the best, right, but we still make do, and that helps us get our jobs done day in and day out. But in the middle is where the intelligent really becomes important. It's about advanced analytics and it's about automation. So we're gonna talk a lot over the next couple of years here at MD Anderson about robotic process automation. We're going to take tasks, repeatable tasks that you have to do that are relatively mundane, and I'll even say low intelligent, right? And we're going to automate those functions. That simplifies your job so that we can actually take the brain power and apply it to things that are much more important to us. Right. So, clicking in, 10 strokes on a keyboard to upload an Excel spreadsheet into the ERP to reflect a pricing change. And I have to repeat that 10 times a day, 100 times a day, 100 times a week, 100 times a month. Right. It's a lot of wasted time and energy if we can just push a button and have a robot take it and run with it. And then advanced analytics. In my staff meeting yesterday, we talked a little bit about demand planning, and then I want to make sure that people understand how important, and there's a lot of things that happen in advanced analytics. We can start with a simple forecast, which says, hey, what was my usage of a product over the last 12 months? And will that tell me how many I should buy in the next 12 months? Probably. It's got some accuracy. Maybe it's 70% right, 65% right, but it's directionally correct. And then you say, well, maybe I can make it more accurate. Maybe I can look at the last 12 months and I can really focus in on what my last 90 days were. I'm going to use that to focus and predict my next 90 days of usage. More accurate, right? More advanced in the process, takes a little bit more thinking to get it done, but still only directionally correct. So what we want to do is we actually want to create a demand plan where we're actually going to try and forecast 12 to 18 months into the future. And we're going to share that with our vendor community. Why? Go back, so they can actually start purchasing raw goods more effectively, because they're more likely to know what we plan to buy from them rather than guessing at what we want to buy. So demand planning is really kind of a foundational and important part of advanced analytics that we want to drive to. And let me give you another example why it's important. Does everyone know who ARPA is? ARPA-H. It's a government agency. They originally were focusing on defense spending and how the government could get its arms wrapped around that. After the pandemic, after COVID, they were asked to figure out how to better predict PPE stocks that are available in the United States, so we make sure we never have to run out of things that we did during COVID. So I've met with ARPA a couple of times, and they see the benefits of what we're trying to accomplish on demand planning. And we're actually going to put a submission in, and we think they're going to fund us to do some research specifically around that topic going forward. So that's something I'm really excited about. So hopefully that makes sense to you all. And these are kind of foundational pieces. Again, remember, these are building blocks. You're all going to assemble them differently. They're all going to have their own flavor everywhere you go. But if you understand the concepts, then I think you're in a better position then to figure out how to apply them. Well, so here's the deal. I fundamentally believe that if each of you can understand the functions around you, your job, your function, and then the ones around you, and truly understand them at a level of being able to say, where are the barriers and the walls? It'll make you more efficient in what you're asked to do day in and day out. You'll be sitting there staring at a process the next time and saying, you know what, if I could get procurement to do this one thing differently, that would change my job. And so then you go have the conversation with procurement and they say, well, we really can't do that because that really adds a lot of labor to us, but maybe we can do this other thing instead. And so that it just allows for these conversations to happen in a more kind of meaningful way. Today's world, it's like you're just kind of in there, doing your job. We taught you a workflow and a process, and that's what you're doing day in and day out. Instead, what we want to do is we want to create thinkers. We want to think about what we're doing. We want to think about our processes. We want to think about our workflows. And my favorite question is, we want to ask why. Why are we doing things this way? And so the goal of this academy is to create thinkers who can help us improve our workflows and processes. And then the other side light of it is at some point in time, leadership roles are going to open up in our organization, and you'll be in a better position because you understand supply chain to take on those leadership roles. And that's really important to me because, I think about it this way. They had to go outside the organization to hire me. Whenever I decide I'm finally going to hang it up, I hope they don't have to go outside MD Anderson to find the replacement. I hope the replacement, we spent enough time on our people that we've developed the next generation of leaders. So those are the two things I'd say focus on during the next 12, 14 weeks for sure. In the simplest form, if you think about if I sit at a computer and I'm going to do a task and I hit the same 10 buttons every time, it's an automatic candidate for process automation because you can teach a robot to hit those 10 buttons 10 times. If we get more sophisticated, there's in the robotic product process automation space, there's attended and unattended robots. Unattended robots just work in the background, right? They get the file, they pull it out of the ERP, they create an Excel file, they go over to some database, they do a crosswalk, it makes some changes in the Excel spreadsheet, goes back to the ERP and uploads it, and all that happens in the background. No one ever touches it. It just happens every day. It's a routine that runs. The attended, though, is more sophisticated. What that means is maybe you, the person, are going to do 3 or 4 things, and you're going to hit the button, you're going to send it to the robot. The robot's going to do 3 or 4 things, and then it's going to send it back to you to do something else. And so we're now interacting with the technology. It's doing the mundane routine things over and over and over again, while you, again, are being challenged with the thinking part of the process. So it's not always an easy answer because, quite frankly, you can automate a lot of stuff. I say a couple of things. Can you find an ROI, right? The robot's got a cost. It's development cost, it's buying the robot, it's storage costs on a server, right? It's all of those things. And if whatever that bundle of costs looks like, did I save that much by automating? And if I save at least that much by automating, then we ought to automate. So I want to make sure that what we're doing here is valuable to you. This is a big investment in you, and it's a big investment from you. And we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly the entire time. So enjoy it, ask lots of questions, soak up the knowledge. And by the way, one other thing that we're going to do that hasn't even been formally announced yet, we're just starting to put the wraps around it now, is we're going to have guest speakers come in, and they'll probably be on Wednesdays, and we're going to record those sessions as well. And I'm talking about some really world-renowned experts in supply chain. Jim knows some people in value analysis we're going to bring in. I know some people who run supply chain programs at the University of Arkansas and Texas A&M University. So we're going to really sprinkle in some other knowledge as we go, and we think that'll be really exciting for the group at the same time. All right. With that, Jim, please.
You're not going to hear me listen. You're not going to sit there and listen to me for 4 hours or 3.5 or whatever time it is. This is interactive. My goal is not to stand up here and talk and get through all my slides. If I don't get through all my slides, I don't care. I want you to learn something. I want you to walk out of here knowing something that you didn't know when you walked in. Same for me. I want to learn from you. Think I know everything about supply chain? The answer is no. So I'm going to talk. I've got some slides. We are going to talk about some somewhat dry stuff because it's going to be data, it's going to be numbers, you're going to have to do some math. But mostly I want this to be interactive. Let's just talk. Let's learn from each other. So this is your course. All right, so I got to say some stuff about who I am and what we do. I'm not going to read slides. Y'all can read. I'm a dog person, you can tell. My wife and I are rescue dog people. That's our passion. If I ever won the lottery, we'd have the biggest rescue ranch on the planet, and there would never, ever be a dog euthanized again. That would be our dream. But I'm a nurse, so I'm going to come at you from supply chain in a different perspective. I've been a nurse for 35 years. Spent about a decade in critical care. So I worked in the ICU. I was a nurse manager and nurse director. Spent about a decade in psychiatry. So I'm going to analyze you too. So director, nurse manager, And then I've been in value analysis since 2008. Value analysis is relatively new to supply chain. It's not new to manufacturing, but it's new to supply chain. And we're going to talk about this. But what it's about is my team and I, we look at the stuff y'all work with, the stuff we buy, the stuff we purchase, the stuff we put on shelves from a clinical eye. All the stuff we buy and put on shelves in nursing units I have used. And I know what it's like when you have a patient whose blood pressure is doing this and they're going to have a stroke if you don't give them this drug, and you put it in the pump and the IV pump breaks. And the word shit comes in your head. When a supply breaks, it can be life-threatening. There'll be more of that. So that's me. That's my team. We got one more coming. We're about to hire another person. I'm going to talk about, the title is Project Director Sustainability, Supply Chain Sustainability and Resiliency. Maybe resiliency and sustainability. We're about to hire somebody for that. And so that's going to get into some interesting stuff. So resiliency, you're going to hear a lot more about through this next year. Resiliency is, there's an earthquake in Taiwan. What do we got? What do we buy that's made in Taiwan? Do they make it somewhere else? There's a hurricane in Puerto Rico and we can't get drugs. There's a plant that blew up or burned down that makes our exam gloves. What are we going to do? That's resiliency, is having backups to your backups, having strategies for just worst case scenarios. Having all your eggs in one basket is no longer the goal. It used to be. It was, and I would preach this to clinicians. Look, I don't care what you like, but we're going to have Coke or we're going to have Pepsi. We ain't having both. Because if we have all one, we get the best price. We give Coke or Pepsi all our market share, we get the best price. If we split it, we're not going to get a good price. If all your eggs are in the Pepsi basket and they have a problem, you ain't getting Coke. You don't have any. So you're at risk. And we certainly learned that in COVID. For those of you that were here during COVID, it was, again, I'm a nurse. We were reusing N95 masks. You ever worn a mask? You want to use the same mask over and over and over for a week? It's nasty, and I don't care how you can't clean it. You can disinfect it. That ain't clean it. That's just taking you can kill the bugs that are in it, but the bugs are still there. They're just dead. It's nasty. That's all we had. So we have learned through COVID different strategies. So price is not king, no matter what Greg says. Price is not king. Capacity to supply is king. If we can't get it, I don't care what it costs. Doesn't matter. We got to get it. So this is what we do. Value analysis, we look at data. We're very data oriented. And I'm gonna bore you to tears with data in a minute. But we look for variation in data. So let's say all of you over here are surgeons and you all do laparoscopic appendectomies. That's what you do. That's your job. And all of you use 2 staplers in your case, except Gigi. She uses 3. That's variation. Now, before I say, Gigi, what's wrong with you? I'm going to say, what's Gigi's outcomes for her patients? If her patients are better, they leave the hospital faster, they don't get infections, y'all need to do what she's doing. Y'all need to learn from her, because that's why we're here, is for patients. But that's variation. And if her outcomes are the same as yours, then we're going to go to Gigi and say, why do you do that? Why, if staple costs $400, your patients have a cost of $400 more than their patients. Now, they might have some insurance, but they also have a copay, so your patient's bill is higher than theirs for the same outcome. Same length of stay, same infection rate, same readmission rate, same pain scores, all that outcome stuff that we measure. That's the variation we look for. Now, sometimes we find variation that's not unwanted. Okay. But if it's unwanted, that's where we act. That's where we want to see if we can influence it, and we got to have data. And many of you know us as the new product people. If somebody wants a new, everybody has to go to a conference. Somebody's going to give them a product and say, buy this, it'll save everybody's life. So they come back and they say, we want to buy this. That we do all the new product requests. 3 questions for every new product request. What's the problem you're trying to solve? How will this help you solve it? And number 3 is the most important. What data will you measure to see if it worked? It's all about data. If you can't measure it, I ain't talking about it. That's how we know if we're doing better. We're a magnet institution. Y'all have heard the word magnet before. That's a nursing thing, but it's about evidence. Magnet says, if you have an infection with this microorganism, we're not going to just pull an antibiotic off the shelf and give it to you. We're going to look at what the evidence shows kills that bug the hardest, the fastest, maybe the cheapest. And that's what we'll use. So we're about evidence. Evidence is numbers. Evidence is data. We have today, and then we have my goal for the future. Today, it's y'all may know the name Pulumi Hassan. She is our value analysis person for patient care. Patient care is nursing, respiratory therapy, wound care, infection control, the hows. That's her role. So anything that is somebody comes with a new biopatch, it's going to go to her. Trey Chatterjee used to do recalls and defects and expirations, and she's transitioning into the same thing Pulumi does, but for the OR and procedural areas. So her customers are different than Pulumi's. Her data is going to be different. We were talking about this yesterday. With Pulumi, what did we get yesterday? Just recently, we just converted gate belts, and now they want another one. They want another size. It's okay. That's nursing. That's PT. That's Pulumi. So her customers are 4,000 nurses. Trey's customers are surgeons, docs, nurse practitioners, advanced practice. So they're a little different. We do care about their preference. Number one, because they make us money. We can't bill if we don't have a doctor. So doctors bring in revenue. So Trey also has to look at revenue. We went to a doc not long ago and said, Doc, same example. All these folks use 2 staplers, and Gigi, you use 3. And if Gigi comes back and says, yeah, but I can bill for 3, I make more money than they do. That happens. That's been an answer to our question. That's not a reason. That's greed. I'm sorry. Ethically, that's horseshit. It's not, you're inflating the cost to inflate the revenue. Your patient don't need it, or they'd be doing it. Your patients ain't special. You're not special. You're special. But that's a tough conversation to have with Dr. Powerful, who makes, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And if it comes to a power struggle between me and Gigi, I'm on the street. She's still working. So Trey's job is tough. She's got to work with people that are way above her in the food chain and try to bring some sense, some normalcy, some fairness, some ethics to their practice. I don't care that you can bill for it, that they need it. If your patient needs a CAT scan and we get paid, let's say $500 for a CAT scan, but you can order the CAT scan with a contrast and we get $700 for that. You gonna order it with contrast? Not if they don't need it. Okay, that's not true in every hospital. It is true here. We do pay attention to that stuff. We do intervene with those docs and say, look, this is variation we can't explain. Your patient didn't need it. I don't care if we get paid for it. Your patient didn't need it. Don't do it. Now, we got to say that in the nicest possible way. But research is a whole nother person. I want a person for research. We got 10,000 people do nothing but research every day. Now, they are not supply heavy, except for rats. They buy a lot of rats, mice, nasty. But I don't know what they pay. I don't know what a rat costs. So there's some supplies in there. They use PPE, they use lab coats, they use stuff. But it's nowhere near the money of inpatient or the house or certainly in the OR. But I want somebody in research because that's not going away. It's getting bigger. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. We're building buildings. So I engage them, put you on a graph with all of them like this, and there's Gigi, cost per case, data. And they all look at you and go, what's wrong with you? If you didn't do that, we'd have more money in our budget. Maybe we could hire a secretary. I mean, whatever. I am not going to tell you, no, stop doing that. Who am I? But they will. They're the ones that cover for you when you're on call and you got a flat tire or you're on vacation. They're your peers. So peer pressure really works with docs. Most of them don't want to be the highest cost per case. They don't want to be the outlier on that graph. And we don't blind the data. We put their names on it. So it's not to embarrass them, but it's to embarrass them. Unless there's a reason. If you say to me, look, my patients are sicker, I'm always the one on call. I always get the patients off the street that hadn't bathed in 6 months, and they're always dirty. That's why they get infections. And these people, they just work 9 to 5. That might be true. So it can't be that we're judgmental about your variation until we really know. And even then, being judgmental doesn't help. But that's a strategy, is data and peer pressure. There's a doc in our OR named Tatsui, Dr. Tatsui. He is our busiest spine surgeon. So he does spinal fusions. You have somebody's back, they got problems in their back, you put a plate on it, put screws and rods in, fuses the spine so it can't bend. Michael had one. If you ever watch him, he can't do this. He's got to do that. Can't turn his neck that far. It's a common procedure. It's a big deal. It's expensive. We ran some data and we went to the spine surgeons, and there were 5 of them. We went to the spine, and Tatsui is the biggest. He does the most cases. We went to the spine surgeons and we put their data up on a wall and we said, look, in a typical case, you might use 6 or 8 screws in your procedure. When you buy a Medtronic screw, it's $3,500 each. Okay, that's a lot of money. When you use an Icotech screw, it's $4,500 each. What are you doing? And Dr. Tatsui, our busiest surgeon, used Icotech the most. So we went to him and said, we'd make more money if you work somewhere else. Kidding. He's a great dude. So that's variation. You could spend $3,500 a screw. You spend $4,500. That's $1,000 a screw, maybe 6 times. That's $6,000 your case costs more than if you had used Medtronic. And we got a contract with Medtronic. Icotech is list price. What the hell? Nicely. Again, nicely. Tatsui says, yeah, I know that there's differences. And I use Icotech when I think it's appropriate, and here's why. Medtronic hardware is made with metal. Icotech is made with carbon fiber. If I want to do an MRI on my patient, I ain't doing it if they got metal in their back. But I can do it in carbon fiber. MRI sees right through it. And I got 2 patients in the last year that I used Icotech on, MRI'd them and found a tumor in their spine before anybody else would have ever seen it. And we never would have seen it with Medtronic because the metal would have been in the way. And so we were able to deal with that before it grew. And I'm like, dude, you should use Architect all the time. That was a very positive explanation of variation. Variation itself isn't bad if you can explain it, if there's a rationale, if there's a reason why you got to spend so much money. If it's just because, well, the rep took me out to Ruth's Chris last Saturday night and bought me a big steak, that's not a reason. Okay, that's ethically stupid. A steak ain't worth your career. But a reason, like I just said, we looked at Tatsui and we were like, okay, you're the boss, whatever you say. And we continue to track what he uses. He still uses about half Architect. He's now using half Stryker instead of Medtronic, but okay. But he had a very believable rationale that, if I'm one of those patients that had that little tumor he found, thank you for doing it right. So this is silly, but this is part of what we do too. Again, I'm a nurse. PO. To this room, PO is a purchase order. That's not what it means to a nurse. We're a clinician. When a clinician writes an order, it's Tylenol, 650 milligrams, PO. That means by mouth. So if you're talking to a nurse and you use the letters PO, they're not going to think purchase order. Sometimes you can be talking to each other and go right by and not communicate. So that's a lot of what we do. Raul in a meeting one day started yakking about INR. What's INR?
Invoice not received.
Okay, to a clinician, INR is a blood test. It's a lab test. It tells you how long it takes blood to clot. So Raul's yakking about INR, and I'm going, what are you talking about? Because I didn't know what that meant. So that's part of our role is translation. We're translators. Sometimes we have to Google stuff. All right, this is silly, but I'm going to do it anyway. I do a lot of silly stuff today. It's just how I am. So we talk about, in my world, it's all about data. It's all about numbers. It's all about evidence. It really, really is. Unless we've got proof, and proof is numbers. Proof is objective. You don't care what my opinion is. You don't care what subjective is. You don't care how I feel about it. You want numbers. You want data. You want evidence. So data says what it says. I ain't going to read this to you. But there's data, information, knowledge, and we're going to talk about all of these. Here's another way to put it. Data is where you start. Whenever we get a new product request that says, we want a new exam glove, our first job is to figure out what we buy now. What's our baseline data? What gloves do we use? How many do we buy? What do we spend? What does it cost? Etc. So data is where we start, and then we go down the chain. This is my favorite one. So data is the ingredients. Information, you make a cake. Presentation is my worst skill. You got to make it pretty. You do. When you're making data on a thing, you got to use, he knows, you got to have charts with colors and pretty things. It gets people. I don't do that well. Just show me the table with the numbers. That's what I need. But that's not most people. And we'll talk a little bit more about what works for me isn't important if I'm trying to communicate with you. What works for you is what I need to know. Because I'm not just yakking. I want you to learn something. So I want to know how you learn. And that's more important than how I learn. So even if you make it really pretty, you don't know if it's any good till you try it. Knowledge is actually eating the cake. Probably not eating all of it, but does that make sense? That's a philosophy, that's a chain of how we do what we do. You got to start with numbers, it's got to be right. Numbers have to be right. If you go to PeopleSoft and run the same query I did, you should get the same numbers I do. Exactly. Math should be exact to the penny. If it's not, something's wrong. There's something broke. We're not rounding. That's why I like math. It doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how you feel that day. Math is math. That's us. All right, so here's test time. This is a concept that you probably all know, but I'm going to roll through it anyway. In our world, new products is what we do. So if we're using a product, or when we were with Premier, we used Premier gloves. We used S2S gloves, exam gloves. We use 50 million gloves a year. 60 actually. We're up to 60 million gloves a year. When we left Premier and went to Vizient, we had to change glove manufacturers because we couldn't buy the glove we used to buy at that price because we're not part of that GPO anymore. So we had to look at gloves. So when you look at gloves, you're going to ask the vendors or look up on Vizient or have contracting figure it out from TCM, whatever. What's it cost? We want to know what it costs. Now looking at this, obviously I'm tricking you, but looking at this, you're going to go, that's quite a difference in cost. Unit of measure is king for us. In that really fun Medline backorder call we have. Really enjoyable. You know what I mean. We talk about this all the time. Well, we need this many cases, or we have this many boxes, and none of that matters to me. It matters to folks, absolutely. It matters to Medline, matters to MMS. What I care about is not a case, not a box, but how many are in that box? How many are in that case? Because I got to break it down to eaches. Eaches is where I can compare Coke to Pepsi. If you're comparing the price of a 6-pack of Coke to a case of Pepsi, the price is stupid. You can't do that. So when you get down to the each price is king. The utilization of how many eaches is king. I don't care about cases, boxes, trays, pairs, shipping containers, pallets, none of that matters to me because I can't compare like for like. Does that concept make sense? It drives some people crazy. It drives reps crazy. When a rep will say, yeah, our price is $100 a case. I'll say, how many in the case? They say, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? It doesn't help me to know your case price. This is what we do with every project. We break it down to the each.
So we don't have a system that does this for us? You know, like when I buy from Amazon, it will tell me 24 cents per ounce or whatever.
We are so far behind.
Okay.
We're so far behind the world. Oh my God. I'll tell you a silly story. So this job, this resiliency sustainability job, I interviewed a bunch of people. One of the people I interviewed was from NASA. And we're on Zoom. And she cannot hide her facial expressions. So I'm explaining to her what we go through in healthcare with sustainability and resiliency with, ships off the port of Long Beach that can't dock. And that's our gowns out there. We can't get them. And she's doing this on the Zoom. And I said, talk to me. What are you thinking? She says, how can healthcare be this sloppy? I said, well, we are sloppy. She says, look, I can tell you where every widget is on the International Space Station. And I can tell you where to go if one breaks, what drawer to go to, what section to go to, how many will be in that drawer, because people's lives are at stake. And she said, people's lives are at stake with yours. I said, yeah, I know. But healthcare is sloppy. You're right. Healthcare is different. You go to the grocery store, somebody's putting stuff on the shelf. They're not putting stuff on the shelf that's expired. But we could. We do. We're not perfect. Our software, our inventory systems, which we're talking about Texas, of course, which hopefully will help us. What we do isn't great. It's behind most other industries. So if there's a recall on, God, this happened to me years ago. We had a recall on alcohol pads. Alcohol pads are everywhere. They're in every drawer. They're every nurse's pocket. They're in every med room. They're everywhere. We had a recall on them. And it was like there's a bug growing in it. You can't use it. We don't know where they are. It's not like when you stock a shelf, you pull the item out of the Medline tote and scan it and put it in the bin 1,000 times. You ain't doing that. So we don't know what lot number and what expiration date is in that bin. So we got to go look manually at every place those alcohol pads are to find the ones that expired, to find the ones that are recalled. It's terrible. No other system does that. No other industry does it. We are so far behind.
So it's the healthcare industry, not MD Anderson.
It's not MD Anderson. It's not unique to us.
Okay.
There are some technologies that will help, but none of them are perfect. I talked to a guy the other day I laid out what I just said. And he said, he said, you remember the Google Glass? What if your people stocking the shelves wore a Google Glass? And when they took items out of the Medline tote, they just looked at them. Don't need to scan nothing. But that Google Glass is reading the barcode. And that barcode tells you the expiration date and the lot number. So when there's a recall on 3 lot numbers out of the 50 you buy, you could look it up and find out exactly where they are because of that Google Glass. I'm like, dude, you need to make a company and let me invest in that because every hospital in the world will want it. He said, yeah, I can't figure it out yet, but we don't have anything close to that. We have some ideas. We have some little camera ideas. And I had this argument with Dr. Gonzalez. Carmen Gonzalez is our chief patient safety officer, and she is a wonderful, if you're on the TRB, you've seen Carmen. She's smarter than I'll ever be and more compassionate than I'll ever be. She's as close to perfect as you can get for a doctor. She had this terrible idea. You know what a flush is? A saline flush? It's a little syringe, it's got 10 cc's of saline in it. So I'm a nurse, I go to my patient, I'm gonna give them something in their IV. I flush that IV first, give them that drug and flush it again. So I'm gonna use 2 of them. We use 5,000 flushes a day. And Carmen said, those flushes could be contaminated. We need nurses to scan that barcode before they use it. I said, 5,000 times a day? She said, yeah. I said, I'm not telling them. You tell them. That is one way to combat these problems, is if you scanned everything at the end user site. As a nurse, when I give a drug, I got to make sure it's not expired before I give it. Well, shouldn't I do that with supplies too? Now, if you're talking to the laziest nurse on the planet, I ain't doing that. That's your job. It's really not. It's my job. I am the gatekeeper for that patient. I own that patient. I'm the last line of defense for what goes in their body. I should know it's not expired. Now, I may not know if it's on a recall list. That's harder. So maybe I should scan everything first. We're talking about that, and it's not a popular discussion. Does that make sense? So this is a list of our projects. And we run data. So for these 10 projects, we have run mountains of data. And every month, we update it. So this is what we call realized savings. What contracting does, a contract, they say, look, last year we spent $5 million with Stryker on this stuff. This year we're going to spend $4 million. We saved $1 million. They bank it, they book it, they're done. We look every month to see how much we actually saved, realized savings. And that's important because we're going to do something different here. It's going to make a lot of people mad. And that's part of, my department makes people mad. Our department is all about change. People hate change. They just do. Change is bad, it's wrong, it's different, it's not what I'm used to, it's not the way we've always done it. But change is how you get better. You don't just hope to get better, you change something. And you might have to change back because it was the wrong decision, but you're still going to change something. So we irritate people. As this bears fruit, and if somebody has $1 million in respiratory therapy, I made them mad the other day. If respiratory therapy has $1 million in their budget for a certain thing, and we do a new contract or we do a new price negotiation, and now they only need 500 grand. We need to take that other 500 grand out of their budget. Or they'll spend it on something stupid. It's not savings if they spend it on a chair or a table that they didn't need or a computer. So when we identify actual realized savings, we're going to take it out of their budget next year because they don't need it anymore. That's not the way it's always been done here, and it's not a popular idea. It's the right thing to do. It's how a business operates. We are 90% healthcare and 10% business. We are a business. We do have bills to pay. We can't exist without making money. If I need their help to save that money, they may say, well, why would I want to do that? You're cutting my budget. I need that money. No, you don't. If you give me a rationale, a reason that you need that money, because if you're buying a widget and I cut the price of that widget in half, you only need half the money for the same widget. Your care doesn't change. Your practice doesn't change. You don't need money. You don't need, you're getting exactly what you got last year, this year. I'm just saving you money. I'm saving the institution money. Now, it may disincentivize you if you wanted to use that money for something else, but then you got to request it. You got to go through the proper channels. It's a fair point. It is a fair point. Now, there's a concept called gain share. We don't do this here, but I worked at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond. We had a process called gain share. So I'm back to Gigi. If I went to Gigi, the spine surgeon, and I said, look, I'm trying to lower the price of the stuff you buy, but your favorite rep says you'll never change to any other vendor because of whatever. So help me. Talk to your vendor. I need us to get into the 25th percentile when I benchmark. Help me. And if you do help me, you get 20% of the savings for your department. Now, you don't get it for your pocket. You can't put it in your pocket. But you can use it in your department to buy an administrative assistant or a PA to do a bunch of your scut work or a new computer or one of those fancy Microsoft whiteboards. I mean, so there is some incentive when you use Gain. GainShare is actually a federal program. You can look up on CMS's website. There's a GainShare put out by, I think it's OIG, it's very complicated, but it's a legitimate federal program for that very reason, for incentivization, because it's not bad to say what's in it for me. You want me to change? What's in it for me? Well, it decreases costs for the whole hospital. Yeah, that's great, but it's more work for me. What's in it? What do I get? That's not a bad thing to say.
Jim, in that example where there's a $500,000 savings, and so that comes out of their budget.
Yep.
For that item.
Yep.
They identify a need for something else, and that 500,000 stays in their budget but directed to something else. Is that still considered a realized savings for that one line item?
It is, if they would have bought that new stuff anyway. It's touchy if not. So let's say we want to buy 50 new beds. And we could do it this year, next year, or the year after. Well, if I save nursing a couple $1 million, they can buy them this year. But if they waited 2 years, we'd save that money. So it is a fair question. We would count it as savings, unless it was really weird. We would pull it up on POs and invoices in PeopleSoft and do the math and say we saved. We would count it. Now it's a 12-month figure. I should have said that. Cost savings is a 12-month. You can't save money every year, and I'm going to show you a slide how that breaks down. You can't go year after year saving the same dollars and taking the same money out of somebody's budget, or they won't have a budget left. But I'll show you that in a minute. Oh, I got to have videos.
Ava is a 4-year-old who recently took a tumble and hurt her cheek. Ava visited urgent care with her mother. Lori was just down the hall from Ava's exam room, evaluating new options of care for her clinic. Lori is a value analysis professional. It's Lori's job to find the best materials to help each patient, from the smallest cuts to life-saving surgeries. Lori ordered new products just a month earlier that would help Ava's wound close faster and with less scarring. From gauze to stickers and wound care supplies, Lori evaluates each item with care. Lori uses a process called evidence-based healthcare to reduce total overall costs while providing quality patient care to individuals just like Ava. Ava jumped back on her bike sooner, all because Lori investigated new ways of handling wound management. Here's to your help from your team of value analysis professionals.
So this is what we do in a nutshell. It's actually not what we do, it's what we want to do. My department, right now, this one, we probably spend 75% of our time on, and we hate it. New products are annoying. They're just, you got to do them. Everybody wants a new thing. You want a new widget. You want a new iPhone sometimes. You want a new car sometimes. You're going to get new stuff. We're no different in a hospital. But the process is annoying. It's a pain. So it's not any fun. So we do it, but we don't want to. This is what we want to do. We don't spend near enough time on this right now. And that's what if we could look at our data, there's a term down the road in this course, as Michael talked about, you're going to have guest speakers. And one of those guest speakers is a mentor of mine. Her name is Barbara Strain. Barbara's crazy. Barbara was from the University of Virginia, Charlottesville. She helped found the Value Analysis Professionals Society 25 years ago. She knows more than I ever will. But she coined a term called reverse value analysis. And what that is find the outcome you want for your patient. Let's say I want to decrease urinary tract infections. And then work backward from there to figure out the products you need, which is different. What we normally do is, I want this product, and I hope it makes stuff better down the line. Doing it the other direction is much more fun, much more interesting. And so that's what that top box is. What do we use now, and what are the outcomes? If our patients got out of the hospital half a day sooner than they do now, there is a percentage of them that would not die. The longer you're in the hospital, the higher chance you're going to die. It's that simple. Hospitals are a terrible place to be in. Full of germs, full of people sneezing on you. And our patients are immunosuppressed, as you know. You can't come to work with a cough if you're a nurse here. You can't be coughing on your patients. They can't protect themselves. Hospital's a terrible place to be. If we can get them outpatient, do it. It's cheaper. It's also safer. They could sleep in their own bed instead of these uncomfortable, expensive-ass beds we have. It's just, the faster you can get somebody out of the hospital, the better. And we talk about it every single day on the TRB. Every single day, it's how many discharges do we have planned today, and can we get them out of here by 10 o'clock? So EVS can clean the room and we can get the admissions in. The faster, the better. Does that make sense? It used to be in the old days, I talked about the appendectomy. You had an appendectomy 30 years ago. You went to the hospital, you stayed there for a week or two. Now we do it outpatient. You can go home the next day. You don't need to be in the hospital if you don't need to be in the hospital. So our goal, that's one of the patient outcome measures we look at. Another one is readmissions. So what if I want you out of here so fast I send you out too soon and you come back? Well, I did the wrong thing. I don't want that. What if I send you out of here and you get home and your pain is so out of control you come back to the ER because you just hurt so bad? That's my fault. I sent you out too soon. There's a balance. I don't want you here too long, but I don't want you to go before you're ready to go. It's absolutely a balance, and it should be based on you, the patient, what your needs are. Maybe you need to stay an extra 5 hours. Okay, do that. It's not about money. It's not about throughput, even though we talk about it every day. It's about what you need for that individual patient. But the fastest we can get you out, the better. Does that make sense? This is part of why. So I have been this nurse with all this crap. And let me tell you, when something starts beeping and you can't find it, your anxiety goes through the roof. This is a patient who's damn near dead. We're beating their heart for them. We're cleaning their blood for them. We're breathing for them. We got 14 channels of IV fluid still going in, most of it with drugs in it, trying to keep them alive. You can't have something break. You can't buy all your crap from the lowest bidder. Or the gray market. Y'all know what the gray market is? It's not the black market. It's not like I stole something from a hospital. I'm selling it on the black market. But I'm selling it to you and I'm not really going to tell you where I got it. So you don't know where I got it. Maybe it fell off a truck. Can't buy stuff like that. We got to make sure our stuff works perfectly. That's different than most industries. If you're working at the Ford Motor Company in Detroit and you're making a car and your welder breaks, okay, you stop and fix the welder. You can't stop here or they die. So all of what you do is part of this. They can't do what they're doing with this patient without you doing what you do. This is a team thing, and I know you don't see it. I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but I'll bring it up later. I'm interrupting myself again. Make sense? It's a silly, corny thing, but we absolutely want to think of those patients as like they're our family. Family you like. You don't like all your family sometimes, but people you like, loved ones, let me say it that way. We want to think of them. We want everybody taking care of them, to not look at those people attached to those feet like they're a number or like they're an annoyance or like they're just one more thing I got to do today. That's a person. That's a human. And we want that to be like our loved one that we actually care about. And that's what we do. We want to support that nurse so the stuff doesn't break. And when she needs to add more stuff, it's in the bin. She can't go to the supply room and have an empty bin. When you get a call, and MMS knows this well, when they get a call from some nurse, Petra, with her hair on fire, I don't have this and my patients are going to die. She's probably being dramatic. But maybe. Petra is, I've said this to her face. Her hair's on fire all the time. Her hair's on fire because she don't have enough Band-Aids. Shut up, go back to work. But she takes this stuff as her number one priority. My patients will have the best care in this hospital. I don't care about other units. I don't care about other departments. My patients ain't gonna suffer from lack of supplies. And if I gotta scream and yell and holler and make an ass of myself, I'll do that on TRB. And she does. But the squeaky wheel does get the grease. It's sad, but it's true. I've been a nurse for 35 years. I was a terrible nurse. I was a C student, C minus student. I barely squeaked through. You would not want me as your nurse or your family member's nurse unless you didn't like your family member. But with time, I became a manager in nursing. I was a better manager than I was a bedside nurse. This stuff, I love it. This is my calling. If this, don't tell Michael, I'd do this for less money. He'd cut my price. He'd cut my salary. I'd still do it. This is what I'm gonna do this till I retire. I don't want a promotion. Michael talked about the whole succession thing. If Michael leaves, who's gonna take his place? It ain't gonna be me. I'm gonna do this till I retire. I love this stuff. This is for a nurse, you're used to working with one patient and making a difference for that patient and their family. With this, I can make a difference for hundreds and thousands of patients and caregivers. It's cool. This is the coolest job I've ever had. All right, so we grade ourselves in value analysis. Value analysis has a handful of people or less at pretty much every hospital in the country, certainly every academic medical center, with a few exceptions because they're stupid. You should have us in every hospital. You should have people like us that are somewhat neutral and objective and look at what you're spending and look at what your outcomes are and try to marry those up. And I believe in what we do. So we measure ourselves. Where would you think, now this is me, where would you think I would put us on this curve? So when I got here in 2020, I got hired March 9th of 2020. I had an office for 3 weeks and went remote because of COVID. I'm still remote. I come to the hospital once every other week. COVID changed everything I was going to do here. But when I got hired, I showed this to Calvin. And he said, "Where do you think we are?" And I said, "Novice." I said, "Novice is where we are at best." We've got a patient care value analysis team that Renato Renato ran, and he ran it good. Renato's a rock star. And we have a perioperative value analysis team that runs okay. That's all we got. We don't have a value analysis department. We don't have a process. We don't have a lot of stuff we could have. So we're novice. 4 years later, this is where I would put us. We do make decisions with data. That's a positive. Data-driven decisions based on usage across all sites. Now, that's not that hard for us. We want the clinicians at the house to use the same stuff that we use in the hospital. There's no reason to have Coke in one place, Pepsi in the other. You ought to use the same stuff. So we're pretty good at that. We get the same data. Strive for system-wide development. It's not like we've got 12 hospitals we're trying to make all use the same item master. That's hard. We're pretty good with that. Clinician engagement with supply chain is limited. I would say that's true. I would say sometimes our clinicians are not on the same page we are, that we're not walking the same direction. I said this yesterday on TRB, and we had this talk in the leadership meeting before it. I was a nurse manager. So if you told me that this supply is short, that we're on allocation for this, we can't get a lot of these, I'm going to go to my supply room, I'm going to take half of them and put them in my office, under the desk. Just in case I need them later, in case we run out, I'm going to hoard supplies. This is a true story. In value analysis, I went to a nurse, not here, went to a nurse's area and said, "Your bin there's got like 3 bio patches in it." Bio patches are like $5 each, $6 each. But it's crucial to preventing CLABSIs, which we'll talk about. I said, "Well, what if you need more bio patches?" She said, "Come here. We go in her office, she stands up on a chair and pushes the ceiling tile up, and there's a bunch of biopatch. Because she's been hiding it for her whole career. Because one day back in 1942, she ran out. She wasn't going to have that again. That's what nurses do. That's what people do. But that's so we got this syringe issue, this recall thing, where the FDA said if you got a syringe made in China, you can't import it. Period. Stop. Everything that Medline made with those syringes, they had to throw in the garbage. Start over with a non-Chinese made syringe. Now, most of our syringes are from BD, which are made in the U.S., so we're lucky. That's just luck. That ain't skill, that's luck. But we do have some affected syringes. So we're talking about this in the leadership meeting, and I had drafted something that Michael sent to the leadership team out there, notifying them of this thing. Michael said, you should say something on the TRB. I said, man, if I tell them it's short, they're going to start hiding them. They're going to hoard. That's what I would do. I'd stick them in a box or in a cabinet somewhere just in case. And they're all, we got 200 pars. They're going to, no. He said, yeah, we should be transparent. Okay. So that's what we did. If the clinicians were really walking the same walk with us, they wouldn't hoard. They would trust. You used the word trust. They would trust. We'll keep them whole. We got their back. How often is there a shortage and you look in the computer and go, okay, this par level has 10 of these and they only use 2 a month, so I'm going to go take some of them and bring them over here and use where they use them more. And they get mad when you take them. They don't need them, but they get mad. So trust is hard. It goes back to that picture of the feet. Trust is hard. If you ever have run out of something that you needed when you needed it, trust is hard. We'll get there. We'll certainly improve. It's better than it was, I would say. When I got here 4 years ago, that was outright sabotage. I don't see that now. It's better than it was. Maybe it's you. It's better than it was. It ain't perfect. We got a long way to go. But it is. I really do believe it's better than it used to be.
Hey, Jim.
Yep.
I wonder if sometimes it's not about trust, but more about, what you were talking about earlier, the desire, the survival, if you will, to make sure that you have what you need for these patients that you're taking care of. I mean, in some cases, like this recall, what if, you may trust supply chain is going to do everything that they can to get you a supply, but if there's only so much out there,
right,
everyone is having to do it.
You're right. You're right. And trust may not be the issue. It's true. It's true. It's tough. It's part of our role. I hate the word liaison because I don't understand it, but we are liaisons between the clinicians and supply chain. And part of what we do is we yell at both sides. Try to do it nicely, but we yell at both sides. Pick a battle that makes sense. This is you just being drama to be drama. You're crying wolf. Nobody's going to listen to you when it really matters, when you're out of dialysis fluid. Use some sense. But we also do that with supply chain. So if supply chain says, you got these pads that connect to a defibrillator, you only use them like twice a month. So we're only going to put one on your par. Okay, when you need them, you're shocking somebody's heart to bring them back to life because they're trying to die on you. You can't have just one. What if it don't work? Or what if 2 people code on the same day? So we're telling supply chain, yeah, we don't buy that, we don't use that many, got to have it. Can't ever be out of it. If we're out of it, we close the hospital doors and lock them and everybody's laid off because we can't be a hospital without that item. I don't care how many we use, it's critical. But everything ain't critical. And that's, so we go back and forth with that. So pick the battle that makes sense. Fight that battle if it makes sense. Limited development and non-financial criteria, that's clinical. So that's, do we really take clinical outcomes into consideration when we buy stuff? Ish. Do we we look at Hub when we're doing a contract. And we should. Now, we have to. But even if we didn't have to, it's the right thing to do. So we believe in that. Do we look at clinical outcomes? If we're going to, Chris Gross and I were on a call the other day. They're looking at the OR stuff, like the booms and the machines that you use, that they're putting in the new Sugarland building. And there's like 5 suppliers that you can buy this stuff from. Are we looking at which supplier can demonstrate the best outcomes for our patient? Nah, we're looking at price. So, do we use clinical evidence in every decision regarding supplies? No. We should. If you get over to the right, you do. Because we're not here.
But how is that possible with so many buildings?
You need more of us.
Oh, okay.
I need more FTEs.
Okay.
We could build it in our process and have it automated. We could absolutely say to a vendor, when you do an RFP, here are the clinical things I want to know. I want to know the top 5 academic medical centers that use your product, because I'm going to call them and say, hey, do you really use this? What do you think about it? I'll tell you a silly, I almost said stupid, story. My second leadership job was with a for-profit hospital company called CHS. And this is when I started learning about value analysis. We built a new hospital. We had to move our patients from our old crappy hospital to the new hospital. It was a crazy, wonderful process. Fascinating. And I was running the ICU. So in my ICU, you got a bedside monitor on the wall. And that's where their EKG is and their arterial line is and all the stuff that you really pay attention to. And there was GE, Philips, and Datascope in that order in price. Datascope was the cheapest. And our company said you need to buy Datascope. And I said, man, it's crap. Philips is better. And they said, yeah, Philips costs more. I said, yeah, but it's better. And they said, how about we get references from Datascope and you go talk to those hospitals that use it and see if they can convince you. And I said, okay. So it wasn't just me, it was the ER director too. Datascope gave us some references. They flew us to Detroit. This is in Miami. Or no, this was in Virginia. They flew us to Detroit to a hospital that they had converted to Datascope a year before. I walked in the ICU, grabbed a charge nurse, and I said, you got these new bedside monitors from Datascope? She says, yeah, they suck. We go down to the ER, and the ER lady, Karen, she says to the ER manager, you got these new Datascope monitors? She says, they're getting terrible. They break all the time. At Datascope, people are with us with their suits, and they're just beet red. What, are you stupid? Why'd you bring us here? So we ended up getting Philips because it does matter. Quality does matter. Safety does matter. User experience and customer satisfaction does matter. It's not all about price, but we can do better than we do.
So you don't have anybody like with all these $10 billion that is coming and all this medical equipment that we're putting in this group that said,
Nope.
okay.
I got nobody involved in capital right now. What we do is disposables. Now sometimes it's connected to capital. IV tubing goes in a pump. Pump's capital, tubing is disposable. But if it's an MRI, I got nothing to do with it. I'll
And
tell you
nobody's
another.
reviewing which equipment is better or not.
Not at all.
I mean,
Is the amount of spend between capital and disposable equipment comparable?
We actually spend more on disposable, which would surprise most people. I'll tell you a story and then I'll come back to that. I worked at the University of Florida, hence my gator. I grew up in Florida, so I'm a gator. Worked at the University of Florida. Now, my world, I showed you our spreadsheet. If we do well, we're going to save about $2 million a year every year. That's if we do a good job. If Michael will give me more FTEs, we might make it $3 million. But let's just say $2 million a year. So we're proud of that. It pays for our salaries and then some. University of Florida, same situation. I'm doing the same thing, saving about $1 million a year. It's a little less. The director, the medical director, the chair of radiology left. And so we brought in a new chair of radiology. Now, I got nothing to do with this. On the tour for this new guy, he's walking around with, the CEO, because these people cost like 400 grand each. And he says, yeah, I see that you have Siemens MRI and Siemens CAT scans. I only use GE. So they replaced all of our MRIs, well, 2, all of our CAT scanners, perfectly good working condition Siemens equipment. They took them out, put GE in. It took 6 months to do it. 2 years later, that department chair left, and we brought a new one in. And guess what he wanted? The old shit. Cost us $8 million in capital for nothing. And I went to the CFO. I was so pissed. I was like, fire me if you want to, but this is the dumbest place I've ever seen. If I work really hard, I'll save you $1 million a year. It's going to take me 8 years to make up a stupid decision because you had to attract world-class talent for radiology. Don't do that. Get me involved in capital. Before you make an offer to that doctor, let me talk to them and say, hey, do you care if it's GE or Siemens? Because we got Siemens. And if they have to have GE, maybe we shouldn't hire that one. We're not there yet. That's where I want to go here. Because we have a lot of opportunity here where we want world-class talent. But world-class talent comes with preferences. And if those preferences are based on their patients, okay. If their preferences are based on, the rep that sells that, they're really cute. That's not, no, we're not doing that. And Michael did talk about this. The more we can automate, the more time we'll have for the fun stuff. It's really not new FTEs for me. It's really clinician engagement. I need one of the a great project we did here, and you know this one well, was isolation gowns. Recently, we did it in the last year, where a clinician went to a conference, a vendor said, here, look at my isolation gown, ain't it nice? She said, yeah, it's infection control. It was Adina Feldman. She looked at it, she said, yeah, that's really nice. So she came back, threw me an email and said, we should look at this. And I'm like, Adina, shut up. I got work to do. She said, no, I really like this. Okay. We were buying Medline isolation gowns for $1 a gown. We buy 1.8 million gowns a year. That's $1.8 million a year. This gown was 60 cents. That's a 40% drop. And the clinicians liked it. So we did a trial. We got surveys from that trial, and 95% of the clinicians surveyed said, this is better, this is nicer, it's softer, it tears. We want this one, we don't want that Medline crap. That never happens where you have something cheaper and better. We saved 700 grand. And we're still counting. It's on my list. We're still counting. So the more of those we do where clinicians come to us and say, I want this thing not just because I want it, because it's better for my patients, it's better for my staff, it's better for everybody, and it's cheaper. That's a win-win in my book. And where I came from, I got one of those a week, 50 of them a year. I've had 2 in 4 years here. I want to snowball that. That will move us because the clinicians will be involved. Clinicians don't know my name. They know your name. They don't know my name. I want them to know my name. I want them to know Palumi's name. I want them to know Atrey's name. Because I want them to come to us with suggestions. I'm going to tell you a story here. So, one of the coolest things about my job, again, I'm a nurse. Palumi's a nurse. So patients are not new to us. But for most of the folks in this room, they are. Coolest thing we do. Every other Thursday, we make rounds in the clinical areas, and we take somebody with us that's not clinical. So we went to the pediatric unit, and we took Kia. Kia's been to a unit. She knows what it's like, but she never really interacted with patients. We took Kia Caver, and we took Regina from Medline with us. We went to pediatrics, and it's hard to describe. All right, you're seeing little bald kids that you only see on a St. Jude commercial normally. And they're playing, and the nurses are playing with them, and we got a school. They're in school, they're learning stuff. I mean, it was heartwarming and wonderful and heartbreaking at the same time. So we go to this unit, and there are 3 nurses gathered around the nurses station yakking, and we go over and yak with them. One of them has gone to the supply room and gathered up armloads of supplies and dumped it in the nurses station. And she's taking 10 items, one at a time, putting them in a Ziploc bag. 10 items, put them in a Ziploc bag. And I'm like, what are you doing? She says, making an admission kit. I said, shouldn't you be with your patient? We could make a kit for you. I look at Regina, I said, what would it cost for you to make that kit with those items for these people 100 times a month? She says, $1 each. I said, do it. And the nurses were like, really? You could do that? That would save them how much time? A day, a month? I don't know. So that was eye-opening for Regina and for Kia just to see that. But then we start getting to the clinical stuff. We start getting to the emotional stuff. Nurse manager for the pediatric unit is Janet Smith. I said, tell us about what you guys do. She says, pediatric cancer in the nation has about an 80% survival rate. But not here, it's lower here. So we look at each other like, what do you mean it's lower here? She says, our patients come from other hospitals where they've done everything they can. And so the other hospital, Memorial Hermann, Texas Children's, they go to a family and say, we've done all we can for your child. They got a few months left and that's it. We got nothing else. But you can send them to MD Anderson. Maybe they can get in a clinical trial and something might work. And she says, so our survival rate is lower, but sometimes it works. And it's the coolest thing in the world because it wouldn't have worked anywhere else. So now we're all crying, you know. I mean, it's like, holy shit. That's why we're here. That's what we do. Everybody doesn't do that. We're the best in the world at that. So we're walking through peds and we see this. I think Kia said, what is that? And Janet says, those are prom dresses for our patients. What? They had a prom. How cool, I mean, makes me choke up. That's what we do. That's what they can't do without you, without what you do. You play a part in that. You should be proud of what you do. You should be proud of what your colleagues do because you enable this. This is stuff that they tell everybody they know about. Their family tells everybody they know about the prom we had at MD Anderson and how neat it was. When we left that day, Kia went home, told her family what she did that day. Regina went home, told her family what she did that day. I had a brand new employee, Shantiana. Talking to her afterwards in the park because you got to decompress after this. This is heavy. I mean, you're looking at kids that might not be here tomorrow. This is a 10 out of 10. I said to Shantiana, who's been in supply chain for a dozen years. I said, well, tell me about how this made you feel, because I've been a decade in psych. Tell me how this made you feel. She says, I've always known what I do. Now I know why I do it. That's cool. I mean, that's worth coming to work for. That's worth fighting traffic for. That's, well, maybe not traffic, but that's worth everything that you go through to work here, not at Methodist or Herman or someone. We are the best on the planet at what we do. Nobody can say that but us. Anyhow, be proud of what you do. This is not stocking shelves at Walmart or Amazon. It's important. I get Amazon every day. It's important. This is different. This makes a difference in somebody's life. I was in the not the grocery store. Where was I? CVS. I was in CVS wearing a MD Anderson t-shirt. Walk by somebody in an aisle and they say, hey, thank you for what you do. I'm like, look, I work at a desk. I play with a computer. She says, shut up. Thank you for what you do. That doesn't happen everywhere. This place is different. And you can take some credit. You can share that credit. Your colleagues can share that credit. And I know it's hard, and everybody's got a boss, and sometimes your boss is mean to you. My boss is mean to me every day. You know that. It's work. It's a 4-letter word. But this is different. And feel that. Take that with you. There are so many people that leave MD Anderson and come back because it's not the same somewhere else. I'm done with my commercial for MD Anderson. So we got to have actual learning here instead of just stories. This is the process we use when going through stuff. Somebody wants a new widget, we have to have a process. We start with what we do now. What do we buy now? What's our baseline data? Somebody wants a new exam glove. How many gloves do we buy now? We buy 50 million gloves a year. They cost 4.3 cents each. $250,000 a month. That's what we spend on gloves. Got to know that stuff. Got to know where you're starting if you're going to know where you've been or where you're going and whether it's better or worse. We've got to measure against something, so we measure from a baseline. I'm going to show you, because I can, let's see if this will work. There's a thing in here in step 4 where it says open payments. Open payments is what we call the Sunshine Act. So let's say Dr. Gabriella says to us, I want to buy this new product. I want MD Anderson to spend $1 million a year on this new product. One of the things we want to know is the manufacturer of that product. Do they pay Dr. Gabriella? I don't know. Let's find out. This is public data. You can look up a doctor, you can look up a hospital, you can look up a company. So I mentioned Dr. Tatsui, who is my favorite doc of ever. This is Dr. Tatsui on Holcomb Boulevard. That's probably our guy. See if you can see it. So in 2022, Dr. Tatsui got $3,000 from some company and $72,000 in research payments from some company. Well, we can go down here and find out who those companies are. So if Dr. Tatsui comes to us and says, look, Medical Device Business Services makes this product I want, we're going to ask him about a conflict of interest. Do they pay you? Do they take you out to Ruth's Chris? Do they pay your way to a conference? Do you go speak for them? This is really bad. So my wife is a risk manager. She's a nurse and a lawyer. She's a pain in the butt to everybody. 'Cause, oh my God. She was working with a doc. We met in Miami, working at the same hospital. She's working with a doc who said, I want you to help me present at this conference. I'm going to tell them this stuff's the greatest thing ever, and I want you to tell them all the legal stuff about why you shouldn't. And she said, okay. Conference was, their part was 1 hour in this conference on a Wednesday. The company putting on the conference flew them on Monday, paid for their hotel, and flew them back on Friday to Cancun for this conference for a 1 hour talk. I want to know that if Dr. Tatsui got those perks from this company and now he wants us to buy their product. Doesn't mean the product's bad, but I want to know if there's a conflict of interest, and that's public data. We have rules, we have policies, we have procedures, we have guidelines, we have protocols, we have laws. Unless you're checking and auditing everything every time, it's like we have a speed limit. Anybody ever speed and not get caught?
Yes.
It's a goal, it's a rule. See? And even if you get caught, you're still gonna speed the next day, or maybe you wait a little bit. This is our attempt to control some of that. To make sure, I had a doc, this back in Virginia, where we did have what I said earlier, where we did have when a doc was being recruited, we had a new surgeon, a hip and knee surgeon, being recruited. We got to spend half an hour with them before they came. So it's like July, they're starting in September. So we get to meet with them and said, what's the crap you like to have on the shelf? What do you want to buy? So we have it here on your day one. Because we don't want to pay you to come here and not do surgery. We want you doing surgery day one. What do you need? And he says, I want this from this company, and you need to know they pay me. I said, thank you. He said, they pay me because I think it's the best thing in the world, and I'll tell everybody it's the best thing in the world. Until you show me evidence to the contrary, that's the best thing for my patient. I'm going to use it 100% of the time. And they pay me to say that, and I do, because I believe in it. Okay, I'm not trying to catch you. Thank you for being up front. So we encourage that. We want that. We want people, it's not a bad, it doesn't make the product bad because they pay some. Somebody's got to talk. Somebody's got to do with this. They're paying me right now. So we want to control it. We want to be able to.
And this open payment data, is this only for physicians? Or?
It's for doctors, it's for teaching hospitals, and for companies. So I could look up, let's pick on Medtronic. And I'll just pick one. Medtronic spends $67 billion. Or is that million? Billion. No, it's million. $67 million they pay doctors and hospitals in this 1 year. Now, why do they do that? So the doctor and hospital will buy their stuff. That's a lot of money. Where do they get that money? From the stuff we buy. Good to know. It's interesting to know. Anyway, I'm not going to play around, but you can look up stuff. You can look up. Now, there's a difference. They make a distinction between if you pay me, and it goes down to like a $7 cup of coffee at Starbucks. They have to, the company has to record this or they're fined by the FDA or by CMS. If you buy me a cup of coffee, it's recorded. If you pay me to do research, that's also recorded, but it's in a different bucket. So the amount of money they pay us as a hospital for research it's in the bazillions. But that's not them paying us, we put it in our pocket, walk away. That's research grants, and there is a separation there. But that's one of the things we track. All right. Video time.
So the doorman fallacy is you get a bunch of consultants into your five-star hotel. They define the doorman's function as opening the door, which is notionally what a doorman was for in the days before automatic doors. Of course, it's really just a linguistic convenience. Doormen do many other things, quite a lot of them tacit, recognition, security, gossiping with other doormen. Actually just maintaining the status of the hotel, because if you want to charge 400 quid a night, you kind of got to have a doorman. Them's the rules, right? And what the consulting firm do is they go in, they define the doorman's role as opening the door. And then they say, well, look, with our tech partners who are probably paying us some sort of commission, we'll replace your doorman with an automatic opening sliding door with an infrared human recognition mechanism. And over the next 5 years, that's going to save you X. And everybody in the procurement and logistics function will clap and go, marvelous, we've secured this saving. And off the consultants go, okay? And then 5 years later, you discover the rack rate's now fallen by 50%, and they're vagrants asleep in the hotel entrance. Because the doorman was doing lots of other things which weren't captured by your mechanistic model of the world. Yeah, okay.
So the reason I show that is something we, as I said, we really believe in data. We really believe in numbers. We want evidence. I want it on a spreadsheet. But everything's not in the data. And one of you mentioned the clinical or the customer service, and that matters. So the numbers may tell us we could save money by switching from this to that. In fact, I did this very process. So when I was at Visa, you know what reprocessing is? Not recycling, not remanufacturing, but reprocessing. So pulse oximeter, it's a little wire with a Band-Aid, goes on your patient's finger, reads their oxygen saturation level. We use 130,000 of them a year. You use one a day, patient gets a bath, take it off, give them a bath, put a brand new one on. Costs about $7. We use 130,000 of them a day. Do the math, that's $1 million. We spend $1 million on pulse oximetry. Any academic medical center does the same thing. I'm at Virginia, we're spending $1 million on this thing. And Stryker comes along and says, we reprocess those. I said, what's that? And so they said, well, instead of throwing 130,000 of them in the garbage, throw them in this collection bin. We will come in and collect those bins and ship them to our plant. And we will strip off the Band-Aid and we will strip off the tape and we'll break it down to the wire, clean it, disinfect it, sterilize it, put new tape on it, put a new Band-Aid on it, and sell it back to you for half price. And the FDA regulates it. We are now the manufacturer. It's no longer a Nellcor item, it's a Stryker item. We are now the manufacturer. It's regulated by the government. We have to test every one before we send it out, whereas the makers of these, they just test 1 out of 1,000. They batch test. Pull one off the shelf. If it works, the other 1,000 work too. Reprocessors can't do that. They got to test every one. So I'm like, okay. I could save half of $1 million. I should get a raise. Okay, let's do it. So we did it. When I talk to you about realized savings, after we do a project, we got to track what happens. So we track it every month. What did we used to use? What did we used to spend? What do we use now? What do we spend now? So in the old way, we used about 10,000 pulse oxes a month. Brought these reprocessed ones in. Now we're using 15,000 a month. You don't save money buying more. I don't care what your price is. Now, within reason. So we go to the nurses and we say, you're using more pulse oxes than you used to. How come? And they say, because they break. We pull one off the shelf, we plug it in, and it don't work. So instead, the supply room is 50 feet down the hall. So if I got to walk down there and get a pulse ox, I'm going to take 3. I'm not grabbing one, I'm grabbing 3. And if it works, I'll throw the other 2 away, or I'll stick them in a drawer for tomorrow. So our usage went up. Even though we're paying less each, we're buying more because the quality sucked. That's not savings. And that's more time that the clinician has to spend on this stupid item. And they're mad at us because we changed it. We're the ones that went out there and said, you're going to love this. It's just as good and cheaper. And they were mad at us. They're mad at materials. Why are you stocking this crap? So that was our fault. Remember, we don't hope for improvement. We changed something. So in this case, we had to change back. But then we go to the company. We go to Stryker and say, here's what happened. What the hell? And their little sensor thing, it was off by like 4 millimeters, which is a lot. So they improved their process. And a year later, we went back to reprocessed and they worked just fine and we saved money. So quality customer service absolutely matters. And you don't get that without data, but you also have to get that from opinion. I hate opinion, but you have to query your customers. You have to say, how's this working? Is it as easy as we thought? If I could save 10 minutes a day for every nurse in that building, what's that worth? That's worth some money. Now, it'd be nice if they spent that extra 10 minutes with their patient and not playing on Facebook, but still, 10 minutes a day. Time is important. It's worth some money. So I want to measure it. I really want to measure everything. But the point of that was take in the non-number things, take in the experience, take in the true effect of stuff. It's not just the dollars that you spent or the number of widgets you bought. It's the impact that the doorman makes. Make sense? Talk about Hawthorne for a minute. Hawthorne is actually pretty good. So I'm going to paraphrase this study. People working in a plant and some MBA student, I don't know, somebody said, we're going to do a study and see if people improve their productivity when we give them better lighting. If they work harder, if they make more, whatever the hell they're making, if the lights are higher, if it's brighter in there. So we're going to do that. And so they did that, and people's productivity went up. So their conclusion was better lighting makes you work better. That was not true. After they left and the lights were up, productivity went back down. And so in surveying the people doing the work, it's like you started working more and better and faster when the lights went up. And they said, no, people were watching us. That's why we worked harder and better, because we took fewer breaks because somebody was looking. They ain't looking anymore, so we're going back to the way we used to. Had nothing to do with lighting. So drawing conclusions with bad evidence is not helpful. We do it all the time. We think we know why stuff happens, or why people act a certain way, or why Petra does what Petra does. There is a reason, and I'm often wrong. And that when I went to that Ted Lasso thing, it was about be curious, not judgmental. Did y'all do the real colors thing? If not, you will, as part of this. And it's in my Zoom thing, and I'll show you the colors in a minute. There's a similar personality inventory you may have heard of called Myers-Briggs. In the Myers-Briggs inventory system, there are 4 things they rate you on. One of them is whether you are a perceiver or a judger. My highest score is judge. I judge everybody. I'm just that's me. That's my DNA. I judge myself. I judge it. You don't want to hear my language driving on the highway, because everybody's an idiot, and maybe a stronger word than that. That's my bias. I can't walk into Petra's office and be all judgy and say, Petra, cut it out. I can't that's not helpful. What's my goal? My goal is to work with her. My goal is to collaborate. My goal is to find out what her pain points are. And if I need to be a little social, which I hate, but if I need to ask about her kids and how she's doing and how's that new house she bought before we get down, okay, I should do that because I've got a social, I got to make a connection so that next time her bin is empty, she ain't on the TRB with a red flag. Maybe she's on the TRB saying, yeah, our bin was empty yesterday and they fixed it yesterday and like that. So kudos, good job. That's what we want.
What is the TRB? TRB, what is the meaning of the TRB? Like,
It's called the Tiered Readiness Briefing. It's a safety call. Every day, 9 o'clock in the morning, we have a TRB. It's a call about safety. So the idea is if you have something in the last 24 hours or potentially in the next 24 hours that's serious, 9 o'clock, bring it up right now, let's fix it right now. The other day, some unit somewhere said, pediatrics, we got doors that lock with these magnets, one of them ain't working. They say it on the TRB, the maintenance people go fix it in 10 minutes. Rather than, and they still got to fill out a work order, but rather than an email and I'll get to it when I get to it, that's the place to fix safety stuff now. And they have a stoplight, so it's a red, yellow, green. There's a none, a red, yellow, green. So none is, green is there's a little problem. Yellow is there's a big problem and I need help. And red is, oh my God, we're going to hurt somebody. Used to be a lot of red and yellow. And materials management has its own section. So they talk about stuff, and one of the stuff is supplies. And used to be a lot of supplies stuff was red or yellow. It's almost always green or none now. It's really improved. And a lot of that's relationships. A lot of that is, well, I could complain about this being a problem yesterday, but it's fixed. So why should I? Where they used to complain about it all the time. So TRB is a daily thing. Marion has metrics. Marion has a lot of metrics. Where he tracks. I like numbers. I like it. Where he tracks in pretty graphs the colors and how often it's brought up. And is it an, oh my God, did we make a mistake? Or is it, we can't give you what we can't get. I can't make this stuff. We only got so much to go around. I mean, and so there's some really good stuff there. And that does help in those areas where you could go to Corey. I say Corey Russell all the time because it's the same last name. And he and I are like oil and water. We're just all the time. But usually over good stuff. And if you bring Corey data and you say, look, we use your units, your heme, he's got 5 heme units. Your 5 heme units use 100 of these widgets a month. And so that's what you get on your shelf. Last month you used 200. We ain't got no more because you doubled your usage. Why'd you do that? It's not that we didn't order. We ordered what you normally use. And so he's open to that if you show him data. If you just say quit bitching, that doesn't help. And that's what I used to say to him. Data. Data is the foundation for everything we do, and probably everything you do. It is the foundation for the house you're building. Maybe not that house. All right, I got to do some numbers. So this is back to what we do. What we do is we look for variation in data. If there's variation, is it unwanted? If it's unwanted, can we do something about it? If the answers are yes, then we do. So this is isolation gallons. This is 2022. We do a 12-month data grab. Everything we do is in 12 months. I'll tell you more about that later. 2022, we're spending 150 to 200 grand a month in isolation gowns. This is our each gown usage. So if you go to the end, it's costing us $2 million. We're buying 2 million gowns. You can do the math. It's $1 a gown. Pretty easy, pretty simple to do. This is our each price. Remember, I don't care about boxes and cases and packs, and I don't care about any of that. Each. This is our each price. Now this 200, that's the big dog. That's what we use the most. That's the one I care about. I don't care about the rest. Spend your time on what matters. I'm not going to spend 6 months on a project to save 5 grand. That ain't paying my salary. So that's what I care about. This is our price of the 200. 98 cents a pop. But look at that. That's variation. Our price in that month, April, went from $1 to $1.20. That's a 20% increase. Our contract didn't change. We're not using any more than we used to. What in the hell happened? That's variation. Same data. Come on. Same variation. Just in a different, remember, you got to make it pretty. You got to put icing on the cake. That's variation. That's what my folks look at and use Michael's favorite question. Why? Why'd that happen? So this is the price we paid, and we paid $1.50 for 60,000 gowns in April. We normally pay $1-ish. Paid $1.50 in here. So we're whittling it down to why. Why did we do this stuff? That's the whole point of what we do is variation. Come on. 2022, 2023. We're buying $150,000, $200,000 a month. What happened here? We quit using gowns? I know nurses. They're not going to go into a room without a gown when the patient has cancer. That we're protecting the patient from us wearing this gown. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes patients infected and we're protecting ourselves from them because we don't want them sneezing on us. But most of our patients, we're protecting them from the caregiver. We're isolation. Well, what the hell happened to our gowns? And now we're back to here. Now we're at $250,000. So our usage went crazy. That's variation. Doesn't mean it's wrong, doesn't mean bad. We just want to know why. And the question is why. So let me start back here. I've got it by boxes and cases because I have to care about it. I don't like to. What I found out here, Aisa's Aisa's ahead of me. We pulled a bunch of gowns out of the warehouse and started using those. So we didn't have to buy as many. Nobody likes them, but we bought them during the pandemic, and we had to use them or they'd rot. So we started using some out of the warehouse that we had already bought 2 years ago, so we didn't have to buy as many. That's where our spend went down. So that explains this variation, but not that one. Let's go back to our each price. $1 a piece, $1 a piece, $1 a piece. We went down to 74 cents. That's because we did a project with Medtronic that said, we're going to switch to RitMed gowns because they're 60 cents each. And they said, no, we'll lower our price. We'll give it to you for 75 cents instead of $1. We said, thank you very much. We're still going to switch though. So they lowered our price to 75 cents. In November, actually, now we're down to 72 cents, and then we went up. Why did we go up? That's variation. That's unexpected. That's unwanted variation. We're paying $1 a piece, now we're down to 72, and then we went back. What the hell? Variation. So we go to the actual purchase orders. Here's a case. We spent $83,000 at the old price, $1 a piece. That's variation. Why did we spend $1 instead of 72 cents? Make sense? It's boring. I love it. I'm a data nut. Most people, it's boring. You can do this by yourself. I love it. So what happened in that case, there was a shortage of gowns. We had to buy a sub. Sub costs more. I don't care that your sub costs more. Sell it to me for the old price. They're lowering they cut their price from $1 to a 75. That's a 25% drop. I ain't cutting my paycheck 25%. That's a significant drop. Didn't keep our business. We still went to a new manufacturer because the clinicians loved it. We could have just done that and saved money and moved on. Clinicians wouldn't have even known. Wouldn't have to bother them, but we did convert because they liked it and we saved even more. Makes sense? That's what we do. That's the fun part of what we do. Fun for people like me. Digging in data, find variation. Is there a reason for it? Explain it. If you can explain it and it's satisfactory, all right, move on. If not, maybe you need to credit us for that overpayment. Backorder is your problem, not mine. It's a negotiation. All right, I'm not going to play the video. I won't even talk about the complaining because I complain all the time. That's the enemy of my department. That's the way we've always done it. There are people, I'm going to philosophize for a sec. There are people that spend time and attention on the way things used to be and look back with it was so much better before. I am a person who looks ahead. I want to be in Star Trek, not Gunsmoke. I want to be ahead. I look at the future. But there are people that are just rooted in the past. That's the way the good old days. And when we come up and say, we want you to change from Coke to Pepsi, we're going to save some money. Yeah, but Coke's the way we've always done it. I don't care. That's not a rationale. It's not a reason. Now, if you got evidence that says Coke is better than Pepsi, and we're going to hurt our patients, okay, that's evidence. Come on. All right, these are the colors I talked about. In this year, you're going to take this real colors thing, and you're going to be red, blue, green, or yellow as your dominant. You'll have a top two. There'll be a dominant and a secondary, and then the other two are ish. So we use these colors all the time. Marion and I talked about colors yesterday. We use these all the time to describe each other, and part of it is I should know what my tendencies are, but I also should know what your tendencies are. If we're working collaborative, we're working together, as if Peggy and I are trying to communicate, and I want her to really know something, I want to know how she learns. How I want to communicate matters not if I want her to retain that communication. I need to know how she learns. And I need to use her style to get that across. When we first did this, not when we first did this, when Michael got hired, we started talking about this in one of our leadership meetings. And Michael's like, what's this colors thing? And Kia and I looked at each other and said, you're orange. He says, what do you mean? I pulled this up and he's like, that's not me. And we all went, yeah, it is. That's you. You're orange. And he is. This is me. I'm the highest green out of two 26,000 employees. I'm the highest green there is here. I care about data. I care about numbers. I care about logic. That's me. I don't want to work in a team. I want to work by myself. I love working remote. I ain't never coming back here unless they make me. I like computers. I like isolation. I don't want to. I'm not a social person. I'm just not. It's all introvert's not strong enough. I don't want to come to your parties. I just. Gabriella, you are orange. We are not the same. But if we're on a team, we should know where we fall. I should know what you're, and some of this is intuitive. You got to spend 5 minutes with you to know that you are an extrovert. So if I want to talk with you, I got to talk like that. If it's important to me to convey something to you, sending you an email probably ain't the thing. I probably should call you or go to your office and say, how you doing today? Let's talk about it. That ain't gonna work for me. Don't call me. Email me. Don't call. I get reps that will call me and say, I sent you an email, and I'll say, why are you calling? Oh, don't call me. I ain't answering the phone. So knowing where you fall helps. Knowing where your colleagues fall help. If you're working with someone that you think, man, they're really shy. They don't talk. They don't ever talk about the weather. They don't ever talk about sports. They don't talk about nothing. They just do their job. They're probably green. Doesn't mean they're unhappy. Doesn't mean they're stuck up. Doesn't mean they don't like you. That's their world, is green. Now, blue people, nurses are blue. I am not, as I said, I am not the best nurse on the planet. Most nurses are blue. Palumi, who works for me, strongest is blue. Compassionate, relationship-driven, cares about how people, I don't care how you feel. She cares about how people feel.
She deals with the nurses.
She does deal with the nurses. She wants them, she doesn't want to win. Okay, Michael, green, blue, orange people, they got to win. It's a competition. Green people don't got to win either, but blue people don't have to win. They want you, the blue people make bad negotiators. Because in a negotiation, somebody's going to get upset.
Yep.
Blue people don't want anybody upset. What color are you? Both of you. All three of you. Green and gold?
Gold, green.
Gold, green, my kind of people.
Blue gold. Green, blue.
Green, blue. I'll buy that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely green.
Okay. Questions? Comments? Questions? This is silly to some degree because you're pigeonholing people, and it's not a stereotype. It's not an ultimate. You don't just get one. You have a score for all colors. You can see orange is the least for me. I don't want to talk. I don't want to do this. I want to be up here. I want to be home in my computer looking at numbers and spreadsheets. Nobody likes Excel anymore. People like Excel is so 1990. You should be using Power BI, and I don't even know how to spell that stuff. I'm an Excel geek. Give me pivot tables. Let me play. That's my happy speed. When I get upset, when I get anxious, when I get nervous, I do math problems up here. Calms me down. I'm serious. I'm serious. You know what 28% of 50 is? Flip the numbers. 50% of 28, same number, same answer. That's what I do in my head to calm down. My blood pressure goes down when I do that. My heart goes, that's me. That's green. I'm a super green. I could talk about that stuff forever. It's interesting. You should know what you are. You should know. The test is free. We got it. We'll get it to you. During this year, you're going to take it. You should know what you are, but it's important to know what other people are too. And Some of them you can just spot. Like I thought Marion was blue because you are compassionate as hell. You just are.
It's learned.
You are.
It's learned.
You do relationships good. Petra likes you better than me, and I've known her for 4 years. You've known her for an hour and a half. You do good with relationships. Me, no. So sometimes you're wrong, like me just now. So it does help. It is interesting. At least it's interesting to me. I'm going to keep going unless you have questions. On the right, that's about people like me, introverts, quiet people. If you're going to learn about how your colleagues are, it helps to know what works for them, what speaks to them. Don't come up to me and say, hey, we're having a cocktail party and you should come and we should dress up and we should go out for drinks and I ain't doing all that. Get off me. No. Don't call me on the phone. Don't come to my office. Don't ever come to my house and knock on the door without me knowing you're coming. No. Email me, text me. If you want to call me on the phone, text me first and say, hey, you got time for a call? I'll let you know. Don't just call me out of the blue. That's what works for me. For Gabriella, you probably don't care if I just call you whenever. You like to talk to people. You're a social person.
Listen, I use the tools. If I don't want to talk to you, ignore.
Click that.
Voicemail. I mean,
That's
I have no
perfect.
shame on that.
But that's perfect.
Yeah, but I don't get offended if people call
But
me.
I should know what works for you. If my goal is to communicate with you, my communication preferences don't matter. What works for you matters because I want to work with you. Vice versa. If you want me to do something, send me an email. Don't call me. I ain't answering. Send me an email. Quick video.
The great study that was done by Peter Skillman called the Pasta Tower Experiment. A lot of you have built pasta towers. He puts these MBA students from Stanford on a table just like this in groups of 4, gives them spaghetti, a little yard, and marshmallow, and he says, build the towers. And we're gonna see how well you work together. And what happens is these MBA students are like, they're smooth, right? They're strategizing, they're talking. Then Peter Skillman does the same exact experiment, but with kindergartners. And they just sat around the table and they were like, do this. And it looks like an absolute mess and chaos. So if you and I were to take a bet on who built the taller spaghetti tower, it'd be a pretty easy bet to take, right? The odds would say, we're gonna bet on the MBA students. But you and I would be dead wrong. See, the MBA students on average built towers that were 13 inches tall. Kindergartners built towers that were 26 inches tall. And in a moment, it feels like an illusion. You're like, what? Come on, the MBA students are obviously smarter, but that's not what made a better team. See, something really interesting happened that we understand about teams. And it seems obvious when you state it, but it takes us a little bit to get there. That the interaction between team members matters more than the individual talent that we have. For you to build a high-performing team to help you achieve your vision, it's not about finding the best teachers and the best people. It's about finding people who want to work together cohesively.
That makes sense? I was surprised, but it makes sense to me. What he said is really important. The folks that do the best are the folks that want to work together. When we're talking about communication styles, kindergartners don't care about status. They don't care who works for who. They don't care about how much money you make. You know, they care about giggling and playing games. And they actually work better together as a team intuitively. That's what we want, is to work as a team. As much as I'm an introvert and don't want to work with you on everything, we are better than me. All of us are smarter than me. Make sense? I played this video to, you all know who Rosanna Morris is. Okay, Rosanna Morris is at the top of the food chain. Dr. Pisters is at the very top, then comes Rosanna. Roseanne's our chief operating officer. Operations is her baby. So she has a meeting with 100 and some people. And I went to her meeting and showed this video. So now you got to watch it too.
Delivery and distribution of medical supplies is crucial to MD Anderson's daily operations. And keeping things organized starts with basic stock rotation and identifying expired items. By making sure products are used safely and correctly, we can ensure our patients receive the best possible care
That's
and
Colin's
also
voice.
avoid unnecessary cost and waste. This example shows correct stock rotation. Notice the already opened and expiring soonest items are in front, so it's used before items that will expire months later. But how did we get here? Let's start from the beginning and see how this messy supply bin was successfully organized. Notice the soon to expire
That's my
items
hand.
and
That's
the
my
other
bad
stock
light
that can
moment.
be used later.
I'm talking
The
to
first
you.
step is to find each item's expiration date. This important date is usually identified with an hourglass icon. As you review each product's expiration date, start grouping items together based on date order. The key is to always make sure the soonest to expire products are in front, so they'll be pulled and used first. Always make sure the items expiring later are placed behind stock expiring sooner. It only takes a few minutes, but organizing, rotating, and pulling expired stock is an important step to ensuring we always use the safest and highest quality medical supplies at MD Anderson.
Whose job is it to do that?
That is exactly why I played this video to Rosanna's team. So, what I said to her was, when the materials management person, rep, stocker, whatever, takes supplies out of a lum tote, and puts it in your bin, what we want them to do is front the stuff that's in the bin, put the new stuff in the back of the bin. First in, first out. That's what we want. Ideally, the stuff that's already in the bin expires sooner than the stuff you just got. It'd be nice if you looked, but you ain't gonna look at all that stuff. You're stocking flushes, you're gonna stock 100 at a time. Ideally, first in, first out works. Whatever in there should come forward, whatever you're putting in should go in the back. Ideally. I said this to Rosanna's team of 100 clinicians. I said, now, it wasn't Petra. It was Lee Avery. I said, Lee, if you go in your supply room and you grab a bunch of IV tubing and you take it to your med room, because that's where you need it, that's where you're going to spike your fluid and prime your tubing. Who's going to do that? Materials management can't go in your med room. You got to do that. Or the stuff that you put in there is going to expire. If you don't do that first in, first out, front the old stuff when you bring the new stuff in. I said, this happens at the grocery store. You go to the grocery store, buy some milk. You got milk that expires in a couple weeks, and behind it, a couple weeks after that. And how many of y'all reach to the back and get the one?
Every time.
That's what they did in the meeting. And I said to them in the meeting, don't do that at work. You can do that in the grocery store. Don't do that at work.
And I look at the expiration date.
See?
Especially with salads, I like to pick all of them up.
So that was the point, is you got supplies in a cart. Materials management ain't stocking that cart. You got a cabinet, you got a drawer, you got nurse servers, you got a med room, you got supplies all over the place. That's your job. That's your responsibility. Don't be blaming materials because you found a bunch of expired stuff in your office. That's your office. That's your med room. Now, most places own that stuff well. Pediatrics, you go to the pediatric floor, they open up a cart, they'll have bags full of blood tubes. The big pink sticky on the bag says expires 8/22 or 8/24. Hope it ain't 8/22. It'll have they check those things. You go to their room, not supply room, but room with stuff in it. It'll have things of blood tubes with sticky, with Sharpie. Expires 12/24. They track that. They are not putting expired crap in kids. They take that seriously. The nurse manager makes sure that happens right. The nurses on the floor make sure that they own that patient. They're the last line of defense for the safety of that patient. That's not true everywhere here. We want it to be. That's why I showed this to Rosanna's group. That's why I said, don't blame supply chain if it expires in your med room. That's on you. And if you're not going to own it, then quit putting crap in your med room. When you need it, go get it out the supply room like you're supposed to. And they said, we ain't doing that. We're going to put it in the med room. Then you own this. If there's a recall, you own this. You got to go look at those lot numbers. Materials management ain't going in there. So it is materials role on the potters, but not in areas you don't stock. Does that make sense? Clinicians don't like it. I'm the laziest nurse on the planet. I ain't looking at stuff. But if I worked here, I would have to. Janet Smith would make me. If I worked in pediatrics, she would make me care about expiration dates of a Band-Aid. Because you ain't putting an expired Band-Aid on her kids. She'll fire me if I do. Period. I ain't asking. You don't get no second chance. If you're that stupid to put an expired item on my kid, you can't work here. Go work somewhere else. She takes it there's no joke. I want that. If my kid's here, that's what I want. People that care about this beyond what many would see as normal. Make sense? All right, I'm going to skip recalls because they bore me. My team manages recalls, expirations, and defects. It's what when I hired a trainee, when I interviewed a trainee, I said, we're hiring a job. This job is called, I need somebody to manage supply-related bad shit. Recalls, expirations, and defects. Bad stuff, I should say. That's what it is. It's ugly. But that's our world. So anybody ever brings up anything to you about recalls, defects, expirations, it's my department. We'll take care of it. Now we work with people like materials management for Defect Depot, which I'm going to leave that alone. I want to change that so bad. I'm going to leave it alone. But that's how many recalls we get. We get roughly 250 recalls a month. That's a lot of work. I have a new person named Shantiana who started in March. She's taking over recalls and expirations and defects, and she's got recalls now. I can't describe to you how scary this is. I'm going to try. At VCU in Richmond, I was the recall person because nobody else would do it. I didn't want to do it. The FDA is located up the street from our hospital. The FDA would come physically to our hospital once a quarter, and they would say, you got a recall on that 3 months ago. Show me what you did. And I was freaky, because they're the FDA. You don't mess with them. They can shut your hospital down tomorrow. My boss was freaky. His boss, a VP, was freaky. They're nice people. They're just doing their job, but they came to see us all the time because they were close. It's like Joint Commission comes. It's like CMS comes. Everybody stops and goes, oh my God, hopefully let's not screw anything up. Don't put your coffee cup on the counter. Wipe that off. I mean, it just, so the FDA called us Wednesday and said, you got a recall on that in March. I want to know what you did with it. Shantiana said, here's what we got, here's what we did, here's what we found, here's the next step. Any questions? FDA is like, y'all are on top of this, great job. This is scary, but we do this pretty well. It used to be sloppy. It's pretty good now. We're gonna get better because we ain't perfect, but it's better. And I'll throw a clinical thing at you. There's a reason we changed. There's a reason we hired a tree 3 years ago now. Before we hired her, the FDA came out with a recall on an implant in the OR. And so that went to the OR person. They went and looked at the shelf and said, nah, we don't have any of those. We had 2. So either they didn't see them or they didn't go look. And we implanted one of those recalled devices in a child. Pardon my language, but holy that's on us. We should get sued. If something happens to that kid, it is our fault. And so Calvin, at the time, who kept calling me his supply chain safety guy, which I hated, came to me and said, fix that. Don't fix that. I don't care if it's the OR's fault. Don't let that happen again. I said, I need to hire somebody. He said, okay. That's where we got this job from. So we do that. I am confident. If y'all know Lauren Smoke in the OR, she ain't gonna let that happen. She will not. No. I am confident we would not do that today. I'm confident if we sent Lauren a thing that said, these are recalled in your area, she would scour that place. She would not just look at the shelf where it's supposed to be, she'd look everywhere. So we did not put that recalled thing in a patient's body. That's what you want. We're the best on the planet at what we do. People like that are why. It's not do your job okay, do your job the best you can do. And if you need help, get help. That's what we want. I know I'm preaching. Pricing is really what contracting people do. I'm a nurse, I can't negotiate. I'm a green, I don't negotiate. Give me your best and final offer. And when they say, okay, here it is, I say that's their best and final offer. Don't come with a cheaper price down the road when I choose somebody else. I'm not negotiating. That's the way I buy a car. I do the research, go to the car dealer and say, here's what I'll pay you. And they say no, I say, all right. That car is sold in 100 car shops. I'll send 100 emails out. All I need is one. I'm not negotiating. I don't do that well. Contracting people, y'all know Rita Manuel Bird? She can contract. She can negotiate. She does that stuff without think. I would never buy a car from her. I'd pay too much. There are people that do this for a living. Not my world. So pricing is their game. Utilization is ours. How we use what we use. Quick story about how sloppy Gigi is. True story. I published this in a journal. Wrote it up and published it. I got 9 pediatric surgeons all doing laparoscopic surgery. Laparoscopic means instead of cutting a hole in you, cut little holes in you and stick instruments in, blow it up, and it's laparoscopic. It's much better, get out of the hospital faster, infections are less, much less pain afterwards, it's better. Laparoscopic. So they did laparoscopic appendectomies, hernia repairs, take out your gallbladder, stuff like that. I got 9 docs doing the same thing. All of in the OR, you have staplers and you have reloads. Reloads are the staples themselves you put in the staple. Stapler's about $400, reloads are about $200. $600 for stapler and reloads. I got one doc using 3 reloads. There's like 20 staples in it. He's using 3 of them. $200 each. Colleagues, 1 reload. Stapler and a reload. One guy, Dr. Gigi, using 3 of them. Remember, variation. That's data. That's variation in data. It's unwanted variation in data. Gigi's outcomes ain't better. Her patients aren't better. They don't have less pain. They don't get out of the hospital faster. So why are you using 3? We get a meeting. We put the data up. Her colleagues do what Aisa just did. They look at her like, what are you doing? Dr. Gigi got really defensive because I don't blind data. I had names. Dr. Gigi said, I ain't never used 3 reloads in my life. Oh, maybe my data's bad. As Raul could tell you, I ain't no PeopleSoft expert. Maybe I might have run the data bad. I apologize. I'll go back and check. Data was right. So I go back to Gigi's team. Scrub tech, OR circulator, all that in the OR. Help me understand this. Gigi works with a surgical tech, scrub tech, almost all the time, for every surgery. That scrub tech says, yeah, he only uses 1 reload. But one time back in 1942, I reached for the reload and dropped it. And had to get another one, which was out of the OR in the sterile core. It took me 30 seconds to go get it. When I got it, he was pissed. That's 30 seconds of wasted time. Patient under anesthesia for unnecessary time. So from that point on, I brought 2 in and opened 2 in case I drop one again. And then there was a time when he needed a 3rd one because there was a malfunction. So now I just grab 3 for every case and I open them all up just because I ain't getting yelled at no more. This is a guy making $18 an hour. This is a surgeon making $500,000 a year. We go back to Dr. Gigi and say, here's what your team told us. And we do this in front of her colleagues. And Dr. Gigi says, holy I don't remember that at all, but I believe it. I need to go apologize to them. I'll never do that again. And Dr. Gigi goes back to her team and says, why don't you pull 2, but don't open the 2nd one. And if we don't need it, put it back on the shelf. Now Gigi's utilization comes back in line with the rest. And she's saving $400 a case, not just in costs for us, but in the patient's bill. Identify unwanted variation and intervene. Now, if her colleagues hadn't helped, that might have struggled.
So the patient was getting charged for 3?
Yeah. If you open it, you bought it. So you're overcharging the patient because Dr. Gigi was snarky in 1942.
I could see that.
And it was snarky because I got a patient under anesthesia for no reason for 30 seconds because you knocked that off the table. You're a klutz. And called him worse names than that. That translated to a higher bill, a higher copay, higher costs for no clinical reason whatsoever because the doctor was stupid. We didn't say it that way, but his colleagues did. Make sense? So that's utilization. It's not what we pay, it's how we use or how many we use, how often we use. Why use 3 if you could use 2 or 1? What do other people use? What are their outcomes, etc.? Utilization is the fun part. This goes back to the pediatric story I told you about a minute ago. If we can pay Regina at Medline $1 a kit to put 10 items in a bag, so the nurse goes to the supply room, grabs one bag, instead of 10 items, that's worth some time for those clinicians. Is it worth $1? Probably. Remember, laziest nurse ever. I'm working on a patient. Doc comes in and says, yeah, I'm going to put a central line in this patient. Get ready. I say, okay. I walk 50 feet down to the supply room and I grab 10 items. I walk back to my patient's room and I go, crap, I only got 9. I forgot something. You think I'm going back to get what I forgot? I'm just going to hope the doc don't notice because I'm lazy. Don't make me pick 10 items. Put them in a kit. So I grab one thing. Better yet, make that kit in order. So every time, every nurse uses the right thing first and the right thing second and the right thing in the same way. Standardize that work. Shouldn't matter how I feel that day. Shouldn't matter if my wife yelled at me that day. It's the same stuff in the same order. Standardize that work. Shouldn't matter what nurse it is, what day of the week it is, whether it's a Sunday. Standardize. Kits. Make sense? Save us time. It's worth money to save us time. Our outcomes will be better if we do the same procedure the same way every time. It shouldn't matter if Gabriella's a better nurse than me. We're using the same stuff in the same order. Shouldn't make any difference. Make it convenient for lazy people to do it right. One more thing about standardization. There's all kinds of Deming quotes out there. If you do a business course, you're going to learn about Deming. Deming's all about standardization, and it's nurses hate the word standardization. We don't even use it here. We don't use standardization because it scares people. But the housing thing is really true. You and I, we all don't have the same house. But the wiring in it should be standardized and up to code. The pipes in it should be standardized and up to code. Unless you did it yourself or it's 100 years old. It should be your blue pipe is cold and your red pipe is hot. It should be standardized. The 2x4s and the 2x6s should be standardized. The windows, roughly. The roof, roughly. The slab, whatever. You should have standardized safety things. What color you paint the house, though, that can be whatever color you want. Whether it's stucco or brick, I don't care. You can make it your own. They don't have to look the same. But where you can standardize is how you make things safe. And that's what we're doing here. So in contracting's world, they care about the middle column, price. In value analysis, we care about utilization. So let's say we got Coke machines all over this campus and we charge $1. This is old data. We charge $2 now, I think. Let's say we charge $1. We buy a bottle of Coke for $1. And we sell it for $1.50, so we make some money. We sell it for $1. Contracting negotiates and gets it for 90 cents. So we're saving 10 cents. We probably buy 1 million bottles of Coke a year. That's 1 million times a dime. That's nice money. That's contracting, not my world. It's about pricing. Clinicians don't care. You can change all the contracting stuff you want. They'll never know. In my world, it's utilization. Maybe you should quit drinking so much Coke and start drinking some water. And maybe you don't need bottled water. Maybe you can get it out of that ice machine on your unit. You get ice, you get water out of the same machine in a cup. That's free, mostly. That's utilization. That's changing practice. That's what we're about, is changing practice. Not just the price, but how you use that stuff. Takes longer. There's going to be resistance just because people don't like to change, as you know. But that's our world, and that's the fun part of what we do. All right, this is old data. I'm going to show it to you anyway because it makes the point. This is back when we called it Novation. Novation was the GPO that Vizient is now. This is a hover mat. 33 hospitals use this SKU, including us. This is price, this is utilization. 33 hospitals, 33 dots. That was my hospital. We got the best price in the nation. Hovermat loved us. $710 is what we paid. Everybody else paying $750 and up. Remember, price ain't me. Utilization's me. Look how many we use. We're using 2,000 of these a year. Everybody else using 400 or less. What do we use these for? Move a patient from a bed to a stretcher. Take them to CAT scan. Move them from a stretcher to a CAT scanner. Use a hover mat so you don't hurt your back. We're using these 5 times as much as all these other academic medical centers. We got the best price, but we're spending $1.5 million on this one thing. That's variation. That's utilization variation. So we go to our clinicians and say, pardon my language, our patients ain't fatter than everybody else's. What are you doing? Why are you using this so much? And it was on purpose. I'm going to be nice. Our employee health department started a rumor that said, if you and I move a patient from a bed to a stretcher, and we have a hover mat there available to us, but we don't use it, and we hurt our back, workers' comp ain't gonna cover us. So our clinicians would go grab this $70 hover mat, blow it up to put a 30-pound kid on and move them from a bed to a stretcher, and then throw it away. When the patient came back, they'd get another one and move them back. That's why our usage was off the chart. Don't let anybody ever tell you workers' comp won't cover you. If you're on the clock, you're covered, even if you're doing it wrong. So we called out employee health for their lie under good intentions. They didn't want people to hurt their backs. I said, well, if we're using this many hover mats, we should have no back injuries at all. Our back injury rate was no better than anybody else's. No different than anybody else's. So we worked with our clinicians and we said, look, we can get these little silly slidey sheets. Hover mats $70 each. A little slidey sheet was $3. It's just slippery. Slide them, $3. Try it, see if you like it. It's faster. You don't have to go find that blower for this mattress that you lost. You don't have to wait for it to blow up. Just slide them. This is our data. Remember, this is old data. The blue data, baseline. What do we spend per quarter on hover mat? $500,000 quarter. $2 million a year on those blow-up mattresses. We did our project in the red. Here's our savings in the orange. They started using the slidey sheet instead. It's faster for them. They like it better. The surveys were wonderful. Thank you so much. It saves us time. Look how much money we're saving. I went to my boss, said, give me a raise. He said, no. He said, you don't get a raise for doing your job. Okay. The green and the orange are important, and that's what I wanted to call out. Cost savings is a 12-month number. After that, it's cost avoidance. If you do a new 5-year contract and save money, you're saving money in the first year, not in the next year's. It's cost avoidance. There's a reason for that, and that's what I'm going to back up to. All right, this respiratory therapy. Respiratory therapy uses nitric oxide, not nitrous. Nitrous is laughing gas you get at the dentist. Nitric oxide is basically the gaseous form of Viagra. It lowers the blood pressure in your lungs. Not what a Viagra is for, but that's what Viagra does. That's why they made it. So it decreases pulmonary hypertension, decreases blood pressure in your lungs. We use it on our patients here. Use it in a ventilator, nitric oxide. Costs $1 million a year. In their budget is $1 million for that. We do a project. We negotiate a new deal. It's a 3-year deal with the company. Instead of $1 million, we're going to pay $750,000. We're going to save $250,000 on this nitric oxide. It's a 3-year contract. So, respiratory therapy's got $1 million in their budget. They only need $750,000 now. We need to drop their budget to $750,000. Like I said, they'll spend it on other things. They'll buy some new chairs for their office. They'll buy some silliness. Take it from them. Only in year 1. Because in year 2, that $250,000, in year 3, $250,000 is cost avoidance. You can't take it from their budget again. They still need $750,000 in their budget every year. If you took $750,000 in year 2, and now their budget's $500,000, that's not enough. And in year 3, now they're down to $250,000. Does it make sense? Cost savings is a 1-year deal. It's a 12-month deal. You can take it from their budget one time. After that, you're avoiding, we count it, we call it ROI, return on investment. Savings and avoidance and rebates, ROI. Savings is a 1-year deal, 12-month deal. I can take it from you one time. Make sense? I'll play this one because it's short.
Darren McLeod is a new rep with XYZ Medical Company, and he is not sure who he should talk to about getting his product into the hospital. Darren is directed by a helpful receptionist to speak with a value analysis manager. Once Ray gets all the product information from Darren, he explains the new product introduction process and emphasizes that new products must offer a measurable value. Improvement that can't be quantified offers no value and will be rejected. It's now Ray's job to find out whether Darren's product offers a strong measurable value for North Regional Hospital, either in improved patient outcomes, improved safety, or reduced costs. When doing his analysis, Ray meets with clinicians to verify the interest, value, and need for the product. Sometimes a clinical evaluation is necessary. Once the value has been confirmed and the product is approved for use, North Regional Hospital will purchase the product. The doctor feels confident that his hospital has chosen the best product for his patients, and this will result in positive patient experience and outcomes. Here's to your help from our team of value analysis professionals.
I'm going to tell you 2 projects, 2 stories, 2 case studies, if you will. This is one. So remember our 3 questions? It's probably trying to solve, how will this widget help you solve it, and what data will you measure to see if it worked? Every project we do. So we got nurses, this is a portacath. This is a Huber needle that goes into a portacath. This was at VCU where I used to work. We use a bazillion portacaths here for our cancer patients. So back at VCU, we use 22,000 portacaths a year, and about 6 times a year, once every other month, a nurse would stick themselves with a needle, what we call a dirty needle. Dirty needle's been in a patient. And why did they stick themselves? When you got a portacath in your chest, it's a port under your skin, and the nurse sticks this needle in it to draw blood or to give chemo, and the needle stays in there. It could stay in there for days, maybe even a week. It gets nasty, it gets gunky. A week later, it's time to pull this out, and it takes some torque to get it out because it's gross, it's stuck. And sometimes yanking it out, they would stick themselves. Not very often, 6 times a year out of 22,000. I don't know if that's Six Sigma, but that ain't bad. But that's 6 times a year. And so we decided we want that 6 to go down or go away. What can we do? So we looked at a new product, and this is the product we actually use here at MD Anderson. We did not use it at my old place. Bring a new product like this in means you have to train all of your nurses in a new way. Have you met nurses? They're a pain in the ass. I'm the first one. I don't want to do that. I got work to do. Took us 6 months to train all our nurses in this new thing. And I'll tell you, the end of the story was, of course, we're tracking needle sticks afterwards. And we had 2 needle sticks in the first month afterwards with our new product. And went, holy shit. And after investigating, we found that those 2 sticks were from the old product that the ICU nurse had squirreled away in their office because they didn't want to change. Helped us change. But here's where I'm going with this. This woman I'm going to show you, her name is Karen Daly. She was the president of the American Nurses Association. And we brought her to our hospital to talk to our nurses.
I'm Karen Daly, president of the American Nurses Association. For 26 years, I was a staff nurse and loved my practice. I had a rewarding career and couldn't imagine doing anything else. But one day at work in the summer of 1998, I was stuck with a needle protruding from a sharps container. I didn't know it then, but my life was changed forever that day. A few months later, I learned that the fatigue, weight loss, and other symptoms that I was experiencing were due to hepatitis C and HIV that I had contracted from that needle stick. In the beginning, I didn't know if I'd survive or what my life would be like. I had to leave bedside nursing and I wasn't sure what I would do. One thing I was sure of is that my injury was preventable, and I didn't want to see this happen to anyone else. I turned my energy to that cause and found myself in the halls of the Massachusetts legislature and later Congress as an advocate for needle stick prevention. With leadership from ANA, support from state nurses associations, and grassroots advocacy from nurses and stakeholders around the country, we succeeded in getting Congress to pass the Federal Needle Stick Safety and Prevention Act. The law, enacted 10 years ago, requires that employers provide safer devices to protect healthcare workers from sharps injuries. It also calls for frontline workers to be involved in the evaluation, selection, and implementation of safer devices.
Stop it right there. The law says we have to involve frontline workers in the choices of the products they use for that reason. That didn't exist before this. This is old, obviously. We brought her in to tell her story in what we would call nursing grand rounds. So we'd bring 100 nurses in. She'd tell the story over 45 minutes. Then we'd bring another 100 in. She'd tell it again. And she did it for a whole day for free. She told that story like 8 times. Not a dry eye in the house. I'm choking up now. She went to work one day, did her job, came home with AIDS. We all have dangers in our job, but not like that. If we could prevent that, we could prevent somebody dying that we work with. And the pain that their family would face. We ain't saving money. That's not about money. This is about the quality and safety side of what we do. And so we had her do this, I'm telling you, all day long, for as many nurses as we could drag. The point was to convince them maybe we should change those Huber needles. We did that. We spent $8,000 more a year, trained 2,000 nurses over 6 months. I still keep in touch with my old folks there because I want to know this. 0 needle sticks after this for this item, for this Huber needle. That's 6 nurses a year that didn't get a chance to get hepatitis or HIV from a needle stick. Karen was an ER nurse. She's messing with her patient, uses a needle, puts it in the sharps bin, and the bin's full and there's a needle sticking out, and that's how she stuck herself. The rules now are that sharps bin gets 2/3 full, you change it out, put a new one in. That wasn't the rule back then. You're wasting space. What are you doing? Just be careful. HIV changed that. Nobody cared about hepatitis back then. When I was a nurse, we didn't. When I started nursing in the 80s, we didn't wear gloves. I had blood all over me every day. When they told us you have to use gloves, and I had to put an IV in you, I'd cut the finger out the glove so I could feel your vein, because you can't do it with a glove on. I mean, I was a jerk. Don't make me change. You couldn't find a nurse now that wouldn't wear a glove. For this reason, for her reason. HIV changed our practice, like COVID has changed supply chain. She's, I can't even tell you how cool she is. Remember I told you I want the ideas to come from the people at the bedside. I want the ideas to come from those nurses and pediatrics that are making those kits to go, why don't you make me a kit? Those are good ideas. This is Sherry Brown. Sherry Brown was a tech, what we called a PCA, which is a PCT here. And she calls me one day and she says, this is stupid. And I said, what's stupid? She says, I buy this thing, or I use this thing. It's a packing strip that goes in a wound. And one's got a red label because it's got iodine in it. And the other one is iodine free. And we got patients that are allergic to iodine, and I don't want to be sticking something with iodine in somebody's wound. So this is really cool. We buy this from Kendall. Covidian bought Kendall. And they took away the red stripe on the package. And this is stupid. I'm like, Sherry, you're right. This is stupid. This is dangerous. That's an $8 an hour employee. This is stupid. And she's right. So we set up a time to meet with Covidian. Covidian is now Medtronic. Actually, this division is now Cardinal. And we say, Sherry, tell them what they did. And so Sherry was very outspoken. This is stupid. You're putting my patients at risk. They put the stripe back on. Because of a minimum wage back then, employee raised her hand and said, this is stupid and putting my patients at risk. You value analysis people, help me. That's what we want. So we made fun of Sherry. We got the CNO to come down. We gave her a certificate. We bought her like a $100 gift card to the gift shop. We did all kinds. We plastered her in the newsletter and put her on screensavers. And we said, give us more of this. So we got an idea a week, 50 a year from these kind of folks. We ain't saving any money, but this is cool. That's what we want to celebrate. The new stuff we're doing with the storefront is part of this. The newsletters we're doing now is part of this. We want other people to tell us how to make their life better, easier, faster. I got one more story. Here we go, We Specs. Now this goes along with the pediatric prom thing. Our distributor, this is a VCU story. Our distributor at VCU was Owens and Minor. And We Spec Supreme is a little foam black goggle. Made of foam. $3, cost $3. We used about 100 of them a year. Ain't no money there. We kept running out. Owens and Minor kept not stocking them because nobody bought them. And our MMS didn't order them because we didn't use them. You buy a case of 100, they last you a year. Nobody cares. So, like here in pediatrics, I took our materials folks and our Owens and Minor distributor rep to the NICU. And we went and saw this. And so we went in this patient's room. It's a 1-pound kid. Can't breathe on his own. About this big, about this tall. 1 pound, 1.2 pounds. And we got a gown and gloves.